The waterfall roared like something alive. Naruto had been staring at it for 10 minutes, arms crossed, trying to look like he wasn't nervous. Killer Bee sat behind him on a flat rock, scribbling in his rhyme notebook, occasionally muttering bars under his breath. The island turtle rocked gently beneath them, and the cavern behind the waterfall glowed with a pale, sourceless light that made everything feel like a dream you couldn't quite wake up from. "You just gonna stand there all day, fool?" Bee said without looking up. "Ya boys got training to do. Sit down, face yourself, that's the rule." "I know the rule," Naruto said. He cracked his knuckles. "Sit down, look in the water, meet the dark me, hug it out. B, I fought S-rank criminals. I punched a guy made of paper bombs. I can handle me." "That's exactly the attitude that'll get your butt kicked." B closed his notebook. "The dark you ain't some enemy. He's the you that you locked away. He knows every trick, every move, every scar. You can't punch your way through this one, 9. Naruto dropped his arms. He hated it when B made sense. He sat down on the stone shelf at the water's edge and looked into the waterfall's surface. For a moment, there was nothing, just rushing water, white spray, the dull roar filling his ears until it became a kind of silence. Then the light shifted. And he was somewhere else. The space behind his eyes was dark and flat, like a training ground at midnight with no moon. Naruto stood in an inch of standing water that stretched to every horizon, and the sky, if it was a sky, was the color of a bruise. Across from him, about 30 feet away, stood himself, not a reflection, not a clone, himself. Same height, same build, same spiky blonde hair, but the colors were wrong, inverted, like a photograph negative. Dark skin where his was light, white eyes where his were blue. Black clothes where his were orange, and the expression on that face was nothing Naruto had ever seen in a mirror. It was contempt. "Took you long enough," Dark Naruto said. His voice was Naruto's voice, but colder, flatter, like someone had taken all the warmth out of it and left only the edge. "What, you needed the octopus man to hold your hand?" "His name's Killer Bee," Naruto said, "and nobody's holding my hand. I'm here, let's do this." "Do what, exactly?" Dark Naruto tilted his head. "You're going to accept me, right? That's what they told you." "Sit down, face your darkness, give it a nice big hug, and poof, you're whole. You're ready to control the Nine Tails." He smiled, and it didn't reach those white eyes. "That's cute." Naruto set his jaw. "It's not about cute, it's about what?" "About becoming strong enough to fight in their war, about being a good little weapon for the village." Dark Naruto took a step forward, and the water rippled outward from his foot in concentric rings. "You know what I am, right? I'm every thought you ever pushed down. Every time you smiled when you wanted to scream. Every night you sat in that empty apartment eating cold ramen and told yourself it was fine, you were fine, everything was fine." Another step. "I'm the part of you that knows the truth." "And what truth is that?" "That they don't love you. They need you. There's a difference." Naruto felt it land, felt it hit somewhere behind his ribs like a kunai slipping between armor plates. He'd heard it before. He'd thought it before in the quiet hours in the dark. But hearing it from his own mouth in his own voice made it real in a way that was hard to breathe through. He shook his head. "That's not true. Uruka-sensei. One man." Dark Naruto held up a finger. "One man in an entire village, and he only came around after you almost died for him. Before that. He looked at you the same way everyone else did." The finger dropped. "You want to count your precious people? Fine, let's count. Uruka, the old pervert. Kakashi, maybe, when he's not too busy being haunted by his own dead friends to remember you exist. Sakura. She spent years chasing Sasuke and pretending you were furniture. The rest of your class, they tolerated you. The village, they would have let you starve if the third hadn't sent someone to drop off grocery money once a month. Stop it." "Why? Because it hurts. It should hurt." "That's the whole point of me. I'm the hurt you won't let yourself feel." Naruto clenched his fists. The water around his feet churned. "I'm supposed to accept you. That's how this works. Accept me." Dark Naruto laughed. Actually laughed. And it was a terrible sound because it had Naruto's laugh buried inside it, twisted and bitter. "You can't accept me. You don't even know what I am. You think I'm a bundle of bad feelings you can pat on the head and reabsorb? I'm you." I'm half of everything you are. Your strength, your cunning, your survival instinct, that's all me. Without me, you're just a loud kid who never knows when to quit. That loud kid beat pain, Naruto shot back. I beat pain, my anger, my rage at what they did to our home, to Hinata, to everyone. You think that power came from sunshine and friendship. You tapped into me and then shoved me back down the second it was over. Dark Naruto's voice dropped. I'm tired of being shoved down. Naruto forced himself to breathe. B had told him this would happen. The dark self would try to provoke him, try to make him fight. The trick was not to fight. The trick was to listen, to understand, to embrace. He unclenched his fists. Okay, he said. I hear you. You hear me. Yeah, you're angry. You've got reasons to be angry. I know that. I've always known that. But we can't stay like this, separated. I need to be whole, and that means I need you to come back. Dark Naruto stared at him for a long time. The standing water between them was perfectly still now, a black mirror reflecting nothing. Come back, Dark Naruto repeated. Come back to what? To being your shadow, to being the thing you bury so deep nobody ever sees it. You don't want to accept me, Naruto. You want to swallow me, make me disappear inside all that determination and positivity so you never have to deal with what I know. That's not. It is. You know it is, and I'm done. Dark Naruto widened his stance, and chakra, red, boiling, wrong, began leaking from his body like steam from a broken pipe. I'm not going back inside. I'm not your shadow. I'm not your fuel source for when you need to get angry enough to win a fight. I am half of Naruto Uzumaki, and I am done being buried. The chakra was building. Naruto could feel it, not just see it, but feel it in his own network, like someone tugging on threads that ran through his core. It hurt. A deep structural pain, like bones bending in directions they weren't meant to go. What are you doing? Naruto said. What I should have done years ago. Dark Naruto's hands blurred through seals, Naruto's seals, the ones he knew by muscle memory. Leaving. You can't just, this is my mindscape, you can't just leave. Watch me. The pain doubled, tripled. Naruto dropped to one knee and the standing water splashed around him. It felt like something was being ripped out of him, not physically, not chakra exactly, but something deeper. Identity. Self. The parts of himself he'd never wanted to look at were tearing free, and each one that went left a gap that filled with nothing. Stop, Naruto grabbed at his chest. His vision flickered. You'll, we'll both die. Dark Naruto's chakra was a pillar now, red and black, spiraling upward into the bruise-colored sky. No, you'll live. You'll be weaker, softer, less than you were, but you'll live, and I'll finally get to breathe. The ripping sensation peaked. Naruto screamed, really screamed, throat raw, animal, and the mindscape shattered like glass. He came back to the real world face down on wet stone, the waterfall thundering above him. His body felt wrong. Light. Empty, like someone had scooped out his insides and left the shell. Killer B was on his feet, both hands gripping same hata, eyes locked on something behind Naruto. Kid, B said, and for the first time since Naruto had met him, the rapper wasn't rhyming. Don't move. Naruto rolled over. Standing at the cavern's entrance, backlit by tropical sunlight, was himself. Solid. Real. Not an illusion, not a genjutsu, not a shadow clone. Dark Naruto stood in the physical world, breathing actual air, and his white eyes scanned the cavern with a calm that was somehow worse than rage. He looked different in real light. The inverted colors had softened. His hair was a darker blonde, not black, and his skin was Naruto's skin but with a grayish undertone, like someone who hadn't seen sun in years. His eyes were the worst part. They were Naruto's eyes drained of color, pale and flat and old. Impossible, B breathed. A dark manifestation can't. Juki, you seeing this? Deep inside B, the eight tails rumbled something Naruto couldn't hear, but from B's face it wasn't good news. Dark Naruto looked at his own hands. Turned them over, flexed the fingers, took a deep breath and let it out slow, like a man stepping outside after years in a cell. Real air, he said softly. Huh. Then he looked at Naruto on the ground and his expression was unreadable. Thanks for the body, by the way. Splitting it was the hard part. Now that I'm out, he cracked his neck. Well, I've got things to do. You're not going anywhere. B shifted into a combat stance, and Samehada growled, literally growled, the living sword sensing the massive chakra rolling off Dark Naruto's body. I don't know what you are, but Dark Naruto moved. Naruto had seen fast. He'd fought alongside Kakashi. He'd faced the fourth Raikage's lightning-clad speed in stories B had told. But this was different. Dark Naruto didn't blur, he vanished, and in the same instant, the space where B had been standing erupted. Stone cracked. Water exploded upward. B sailed backward and hit the cavern wall hard enough to crater it, Samehada spinning away from his grip. It happened in under a second. One movement. One palm strike that Naruto barely even saw. Don't, Dark Naruto said, standing where B had been. He wasn't even breathing hard. I've got nothing against you, Ato. You're one of the only people who ever treated us right, but I will put you down if you get in my way. B peeled himself out of the wall. Blood ran from his nose, and one arm hung at an angle that wasn't right, but he was grinning. All right, evil twin, you got some juice, but you just woke up in that body and you're burning through chakra like it's free. Juki and I, we've been partners for decades. You really want to do this dance? Chakra cloak erupted around B version 1, then version 2 in rapid succession, the Eight Tails power flooding through him until he was wrapped in a shroud of bubbling energy, 4 tails whipping behind him. Dark Naruto watched this with an expression of mild interest. No, he said. I don't. His hands moved. 4 seals, tiger, horse, rabbit, rat, and then he slammed his palm on the ground. The cavern floor opened, not an earthquake, not a jutsu Naruto recognized. It was a sealing technique, a massive, concentric seal array that bloomed across the stone like ink spreading on water, and every line of it was designed to suppress Biju chakra. Naruto knew sealing. His father had been the greatest seal master in Konoha's history. And this was Uzumaki-level work, complex and brutal, the kind of seal that shouldn't be possible to deploy in combat. But Dark Naruto had all of Naruto's knowledge, all of his instincts. And apparently, all of the Uzumaki bloodline talent for Fuinjutsu that Naruto had never bothered to fully develop. B's chakra cloak flickered, sputtered, died. He stumbled, suddenly just a man again, and the seal pulsed beneath his feet like a heartbeat. Suppression seal, B grunted. You've gotta be, how? You know how. Dark Naruto straightened. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, son of the 4th Hokage, son of Kushina Uzumaki. I have every drop of their talent and none of their loyalty to a village that treated their child like garbage. He turned toward the cavern's exit. The seal will fade in about an hour, enough time for me to get where I'm going. Wait, Naruto struggled to his feet. His legs shook. Everything shook. He felt like he was trying to operate a body with half the parts missing. Where are you? What are you going to do? Dark Naruto stopped at the threshold. Sunlight carved his silhouette in hard lines. He didn't turn around. Something you never had the guts to do, he said. Hold them accountable. Then he was gone. No shunshin smoke, no dramatic exit. Just gone, moving so fast that the afterimage lingered for a heartbeat before dissolving. Naruto's knees gave out, and he hit the stone floor again. The world was spinning. Somewhere deep inside him, where the seal that held the 9 tails burned like a furnace, the fire had dimmed to embers. Kurama's chakra was there, he could feel it, but the connection was frayed, thin, like a rope with half its strands cut. B limped over to him. This is bad, kid. This is real bad. I need to Juki, can you hear me? We need to get word out. He looked down at Naruto. Who's he going after? What did he mean, hold them accountable? Naruto closed his eyes. He knew. In his gut, in the empty spaces where his other half used to live, he knew exactly who Dark Naruto was going after, the people in charge, the ones who made the decisions, starting at the top. 300 miles south, on the coast of the Land of Lightning, the Allied Shinobi Forces' forward command base hummed with the organized chaos of a war machine coming to life. It wasn't much to look at. A repurposed fishing village reinforced with earthwork barriers and camouflage netting, the kind of place that would barely rate a dot on a map in peacetime. But right now, it was the nerve center for the largest military operation in Shinobi history. and every building crackled with the energy of 1,000 conversations happening at once. Tsunade stood in the command center. The village's old meeting hall, expanded with temporary walls and crammed with communication equipment, map tables, and far too many people. She had a sake cup in her hand that she hadn't drunk from in 20 minutes, which was either a sign of extreme focus or extreme stress. At the moment, it was both. Raikage's forces are deployed along the northern line here and here. Shikaku Nara dragged his finger across the main battle map. Troop markers clustered like colored pebbles across the topographic lines. Gaara's division is moving to reinforce the eastern flank. But we've got a gap, right here between the ravine and the coast, and if Kabuto's reanimations hit that gap before we plug it, we'll have Zetsu clones behind our lines within hours. Pull Darui's unit south to cover it, Tsunade said. That leaves the ridge exposed. The ridge has natural choke points. We can hold it with half the numbers if we position sensor types at the approaches. What about Mifyun's samurai, en route? 6 hours minimum. Tsunade finally took a drink. The sake was warm and rough and exactly what she needed. War was chaos shaped into strategy, and she'd been doing this for 14 hours straight without a break. Her eyes burned. Her lower back ached from standing at the table. But she didn't sit down, because if she sat down, she might not get up again, and the 5th Hokage didn't get to be tired when people were about to die. Lady Tsunade. Shizune appeared at her elbow, ledger in hand, looking like she hadn't slept either. The medical corps reports from the staging area. We're short on field surgeons for the second wave. I've reallocated from the reserve hospital, but how short? 12. We need at least 12 more for adequate coverage. Pull them from the base hospital here. We won't need full surgical capacity at a command post. But if there's an attack on the base itself, then I'm here and I'm worth 12 field surgeons. Tsunade set her cup down. Do it, Shizune. Shizune nodded and disappeared into the crowd. Tsunade turned back to the map, but her mind drifted, just for a second, to where it shouldn't go. To the island Turtle, somewhere off the coast, where Naruto was supposed to be training with Killer Bee, learning to control the Ninetales, becoming the weapon they needed him to be. She hated that word. Weapon. She hated that she'd used it in the briefing 2 days ago, hated that the other cage had nodded like it was obvious. Naruto was a kid, 16 years old. He'd saved the village from pain, carried burdens that would have broken most adults, and his reward was to be shipped off to a secret island so he could learn to be more useful. He'd be furious if he knew about the war, she thought. He'd want to fight. He'd want to protect everyone. That's who he is. She pushed the thought away. There was a war to manage, Lady Hokage. An Anbu appeared at the edge of the room, cat mask, standard gray armor. The perimeter patrol reports all clear, rotation in 40 minutes. Double the sensor coverage on the eastern approach. We're close enough to the coast that I don't trust the standard sweep range. Yes, ma'am. The Anbu vanished. Tsunade picked up her sake cup again and frowned at it. Empty. It was going to be a long night. He came in through the water. Not the front gate, not the perimeter, not through any of the approaches that the sensor teams were covering. Dark Naruto came up through the drainage system that ran beneath the village. The old storm channels that nobody had thought to seal, because nobody thought to invade a military command post through a pipe barely wide enough to crawl through. He'd known about the drainage system because Naruto had studied infrastructure maps during the Allied Forces planning meetings. One of 1,000 small details filed away in their shared memory. Useless to a boy who thought he'd never need to infiltrate anything. Invaluable to the half of him that thought about what could be done with what he knew. Dark Naruto surfaced in a maintenance shaft behind the supply depot. He was soaked and filthy and didn't care. He crouched in the shadows and let his senses expand. The base was full of chakra signatures. Hundreds of them, shinobi from all 5 nations, milling around, sleeping, arguing, preparing for war. He could feel Tsunade's signature in the command center like a bonfire among candles. She'd always had enormous chakra reserves, and even suppressed and controlled, she radiated power. He closed his eyes and mapped the base in his mind. guard rotations, patrol paths, the gap between sensor sweeps. The Anbu positions, there were 6 that he could feel and probably 2 more suppressing their signatures, which meant 8 total. Standard protection detail for a cage in a forward position. 8 Anbu, a base full of Waredi shinobi. Shikaku Nara in the command center, who might be the most dangerous man in the building because his brain worked faster than anyone's hands. Dark Naruto smiled to himself. It wasn't a kind smile. He formed a cross seal, and 20 shadow clones materialized in the cramped shaft, each one suppressing its chakra to near 0. They looked at him with his own white eyes and waited. "You know the plan," he whispered. "Phase 1 in 4 minutes. Phase 2 when she's isolated. Phase 3. He paused. "Phase 3 is mine." The clones scattered like roaches, disappearing into the infrastructure of the base, into crawl spaces, up through ventilation shafts, behind walls. Moving to positions he'd been calculating for the 3 hours, it had taken him to reach this base from the island Turtle. 3 hours. He'd run most of the way across open ocean, using chakra control that would have made Naruto's teachers weep. Leaping from wave crest to wave crest with a precision born from rage and clarity, and the intoxicating freedom of having a body that answered only to him. He'd stopped once, at a small island, to raid a supply cache he knew about from Naruto's logistical briefings. Food, soldier pills, a blank scroll, and ink. The scroll was important. He'd spent 20 minutes writing on it while eating, a seal array so complex, it would have taken most Fuinjutsu specialists a week to design. He'd done it from memory, from instinct, from the Uzumaki blood that sang in his veins with a knowledge the clan had spent generations cultivating. It was a chakra suppression seal, portable, activatable by touch, strong enough to contain a cage, strong enough to contain Tsunade. 4 minutes. He counted them by heartbeat, crouched in the dark behind the supply depot, listening to the sounds of the base. Footsteps. Voices. The scratch of radio communications. Somewhere, a dog barked, one of the Inuzuka tracking hounds stationed at the perimeter. He'd factored them in. The clones heading for the perimeter were carrying scent bombs he'd improvised from supply materials. Concentrated garlic oil and pepper extract sealed in wax capsules. Nothing lethal. Just enough to overwhelm a canine nose for 5 critical minutes. 3 minutes. He could hear 2 guards walking the path between the supply depot and the command center. Their conversation drifted to him in fragments, something about rations, about a card game, about whether the war would last a month or a year. 2 minutes. He reached into his pouch and palmed 3 smoke bombs and a flash tag, standard equipment, nothing fancy. The best operations didn't need fancy. 1 minute. His clones would be in position by now, at the perimeter, at the generator that powered the communication array, at the junction boxes for the sensor barrier, in the crawl space beneath the command center. Every piece in place. He took a breath. Let it out, now. The base's lights went dark. Not the slow flicker of a power failure, a hard, instant blackout, every electrical system dying at once as his clones severed the generator feeds with simultaneous precision. The sensor barrier dropped. The communication array went dead. The perimeter floodlights vanished, and the base was plunged into a darkness that lasted exactly long enough for 100 trained shinobi to tense, reach for weapons, and turn toward the wrong direction. Because in the same instant the lights died, the scent bombs detonated at the perimeter, 4 of them, cardinal points. And the Inuzuka hounds went wild, howling and sneezing and flooding their handlers with false alarm signals. And in the same instant as that, 3 of his clones at the perimeter launched explosive tags into the tree line. Not at the base, away from it, creating the sound and light signature of an incoming attack from the forest. Every head turned outward. Inside the command center, Tsunade would be doing what she always did in a crisis, taking charge, issuing orders, moving to the center of the room where she could coordinate. Her Anbu would be closing around her, forming the standard protection diamond. And Shikaku Nara would be analyzing, trying to figure out what was happening and where the real threat was. Dark Naruto gave them 8 seconds to settle into their defensive positions. Then he put on Phase 2. The clones beneath the command center detonated smoke bombs, not in the command center itself, but in the adjacent buildings. 3 simultaneous detonations: the communications room, the medical station, and the officers' quarters. Non-lethal, 0 casualties, maximum confusion. Thick purple smoke billowed from windows and doorways, and the cries of confusion that followed were loud enough to pull the Anbu attention in 3 directions at once. And in the single heartbeat, where the Anbu formation around Tsunade wavered, where they had to decide whether to hold position or respond to what sounded like a multi-point attack on command infrastructure, Dark Naruto came through the floor. The maintenance hatch beneath the command center was held by 2 bolts that his clone had already loosened. He hit it with a chakra-enhanced palm strike and exploded upward into the dark room like a blonde missile, trailing smoke and moving at a speed that turned the world into streaks. There were 4 Anbu around Tsunade. He registered their positions in the half-second it took to clear the hatch: cat mask at 10 o'clock, boar mask at 2, eagle mask at 6, deer mask at 8. Tsunade herself was in the center, half-turned toward the smoke billowing from the communications room next door, one hand raised to give an order. He hit the cat mask first. Palm strike to the sternum, chakra-loaded, hard enough to launch the Anbu backward into the wall. The boar mask reacted, fast, Anbu fast, and got a kunai out before Dark Naruto's elbow found his temple. The eagle mask went for a jutsu, hands already forming seals, and Dark Naruto kicked his legs out from under him and put him down with a knife hand strike to the back of the neck. Precise. Controlled. No more force than necessary. The deer mask was better. She read the attack pattern in real time, and instead of engaging directly, she threw herself between Dark Naruto and Tsunade, hands already completing a substitution jutsu. He let her substitute. Let her replacement log appear and shatter. Tracked her chakra signature to where she reappeared, 3 meters to the left, behind the map table, and sent a shadow clone at her that arrived before she'd finished her landing. The clone caught her in a full-body hold, and he slapped the suppression seal onto her forehead before she could channel a single technique. The deer mask crumpled. Unconscious, alive, no permanent damage, 4 Anbu in under 3 seconds. He wasn't even breathing hard. Tsunade stared at him. The command center was chaos: smoke, darkness, unconscious elite guards scattered like discarded toys. Shikaku Nara was across the room, pinned behind an overturned table by 2 shadow clones who had his arms locked and a seal tag pressed to his vest. Other staff members were frozen in place, some reaching for weapons, all of them trying to process what had just happened in a span of time too short for most human brains to track. And in the center of it, Dark Naruto stood 3 feet from the 5th Hokage, looking at her with those flat, pale eyes. Tsunade's fist was already cocked. Chakra blazed along her arm. She hadn't survived 3 wars by being slow, and the punch she threw at his face carried enough force to level a building. He caught it, not blocked, not deflected. Caught. His palm wrapped around her fist, and the impact shockwave blew out every window in the room, sent papers flying, cracked the floor in a starburst pattern beneath their feet. But he didn't move. His arm shook. She was strong, monstrously strong, but he held, and while she was processing the impossibility of a teenager catching her punch, his other hand came up and pressed the suppression scroll against her collarbone. The seal activated instantly. Tsunade felt it. He could see it in her face, the way her eyes widened as the chakra she'd gathered drained away like water through a cracked cup. The strength of 100 seal on her forehead flickered. Her chakra-enhanced strength died, and her fist in his grip became just a fist, still dangerous but no longer world-ending. "What?" she started. "Don't." He released her fist and stepped back. "I don't want to hurt you, any of you." His eyes swept the room. "Everyone in this room is alive, and will stay alive as long as nobody does anything stupid in the next 60 seconds. Who are you? Shikaku's voice was calm, impressively calm for a man pinned to the floor by two shadow clones. His eyes were doing that thing Naruto remembered from briefings, that rapid calculation look that meant his brain was running scenarios at 1,000 per second. Dark Naruto looked at him. You know who I am, Nara. You're smart enough to figure it out. Blonde hair, whisker marks. Uzumaki chakra signature, think about it. Shikaku's eyes widened, then narrowed. That's not possible. And yet, Tsunade was flexing her hand, testing the suppression seal's limits. You look like Naruto, she said, and her voice had that steel edge she used when she was scared and refusing to show it. But you're not him. I'm the half of him you never met. Dark Naruto turned back to her. The half he buried so deep he forgot it existed. I'm every bad day, every lonely night, every time someone looked at him like he was a monster. I'm the part of Naruto Uzumaki that has something to say to you, Tsunade Senju, and you're going to listen. Like hell he moved again. Not to strike, he was done striking. He grabbed her arm, firm but not bruising, and in the same motion, his foot came down on a seal array that one of his clones had painted on the floor during the blackout. It was a transportation seal, not the flying thunder god, not exactly, but something crude and powerful that burned through a massive amount of chakra in exchange for one short-range teleportation jump. The seal lit up like a sun. Shikaku screamed, "Stop him." And two Anbu who'd been playing dead surged up from the floor, and Tsunade drove her elbow toward Dark Naruto's throat, and a Chunin by the door launched a wind jutsu that would have sliced them both in half. The light consumed them. When it faded, the command center was empty. Tsunade was gone. Dark Naruto was gone. The seal array on the floor was burned black and inert, every drop of chakra spent. Shikaku threw off the shadow clones. They popped into smoke the moment the original vanished and scrambled to the ruined seal, studying the burn pattern, trying to read something, anything, from the residue. Teleportation seal, he said. Short range, 5 kilometers, maybe 10. Whoever he is, he planned this. He planned all of this. Around him, the base was coming back to life. Lights flickered on as backup generators engaged. Communication equipment crackled. Anbu were groaning, sitting up, checking each other for injuries. In the distance, the perimeter guards were responding to the explosions in the tree line and finding nothing. Shikaku stood up. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer improbability of what had just happened. Someone had infiltrated a fully operational military command base, disabled 8 Anbu, neutralized a cage, and disappeared with her. In under 2 minutes. Get me a communication line to Kakashi Headache, he said. Now, right now, and someone get me a sensor team. Full spectrum sweep, everything they've got. Sir, the communication array is still, then send a runner, send a hawk, send a telepathic message if you have a Yamanaka available, I don't care how. Kakashi needs to know. Shikaku looked at the burnt seal on the floor. The hawkage has been taken. And the person who took her is Naruto Uzumaki. Nobody moved for a second. They thought he was joking, or insane, or both. Move, Shikaku barked, and the room erupted. The jump took them 10 kilometers northwest to the coast, where Dark Naruto had pre-staged the next phase. They materialized on a rocky beach in darkness, the sea crashing against black stones, and Tsunade immediately twisted free of his grip and drove a knee at his groin. He sidestepped. She staggered. The suppression seal was hitting her hard now, draining her chakra reserves faster than she could replenish them, and went down to one knee on the wet rocks. I told you, he said, standing over her. I don't want to hurt you. Then what do you want? She looked up at him, and even kneeling, even chakra suppressed, even soaking wet on a beach in the middle of nowhere, she was Tsunade. There was no fear in her eyes, only fury. If this is some kind of Akatsuki trick, some Zetsu impersonation, you picked the wrong cage to kidnap. No trick. No Zetsu, no Akatsuki? He crouched down to her level. In the moonlight, his resemblance to Naruto was painful, the same jawline, the same whisker marks, the same stubborn set to his mouth. I'm the part of Naruto that the village created. The part that you helped create by showing up 12 years too late and acting like grandmother of the year. Something flickered across Tsunade's face. Not anger. Something older, deeper, rower. You don't know what you're talking about, she said. I know everything Naruto knows. I remember every second of his life. I remember being 5 years old and finding out from a drunk Chunin that the reason everyone hated me was because of what my own father put inside me. I remember being 6 and trying to buy groceries and having the shopkeeper throw me out. His voice was steady. Factual. He wasn't yelling. That was worse than yelling. I remember being 7 and asking the third Hokage why my parents left me alone and watching him lie to my face because the truth was classified. I remember all of it, Tsunade, and I've got some questions. Down the beach, a small boat was hidden among the rocks, a fishing vessel he'd procured during his 3-hour sprint across the ocean. Nothing fancy. A wooden hull, a sail, and enough supplies for a week. He stood and nodded toward it. We're leaving. I've got a place set up. Somewhere nobody will find us. Not your Anbu, not the censor teams, not even Kakashi's hounds. You and I are going to have a conversation that's been 16 years overdue. And if I refuse? You can't mold enough chakra to fight me right now, and we're 10 kilometers from the nearest friendly position. You can try to run. You'll last about an hour in your condition before the suppression seal drops you. Or, he held out a hand. An absurd gesture, gentlemanly, almost polite, offering to help her up. You can come willingly and hear me out, because I think, deep down, you know I'm owed that much. Tsunade looked at his hand, looked at his face. Looked at the dark ocean stretching out behind him, the war she was supposed to be running now leaderless and chaotic without her. She didn't take his hand. She stood up on her own, because she was Tsunade Senju, and she didn't need help standing from anyone, least of all from a shadow wearing her surrogate grandson's face. If you hurt anyone, she said, if a single person in that base dies from what you did tonight, nobody's dead. Nobody's even seriously injured. I was precise and I was careful and I was better than every single ninja in that building. You know whose training made me that good? Jiraiya's, Kakashi's, yours. He turned toward the boat. Let's go. Tsunade followed. Not because she'd given up. She was already cataloging her situation, testing the suppression seal's limits, measuring his chakra output, estimating how long before her people mobilized a search. She followed because he was right about one thing. She couldn't fight him. Not now, not like this. And if there was even a chance, he was really some part of Naruto, some twisted, broken piece of the boy she'd bet her necklace on. Then she needed to understand what he wanted before she figured out how to stop him. They pushed the boat into the surf. Dark Naruto raised the sail with practiced efficiency, and the wind, natural wind, no jutsu, caught the canvas and pulled them out into the dark water. Tsunade sat in the stern and watched the coast shrink behind them. The command base's lights were visible for a few minutes, a cluster of firefly glows on the dark shore, and then they were gone, and there was nothing but ocean and sky and the sound of the hull cutting through black waves. Where are you taking me? She asked. Somewhere I prepared, you'll see. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now. He sat at the tiller, guiding the boat with one hand. His other hand rested on his knee, and she could see, even in the dark, that it was trembling slightly. The teleportation had cost him. The Anbu takedowns had cost him. He was burning through the chakra he'd torn from Naruto, and there was no way to replenish it at the rate a Jinchuriki could. She filed that information away. Weakness, limitation, exploitable eventually if she was patient. You said you have questions, she said. Lots of them. Ask one now. He looked at her. The moonlight caught those dead white eyes, and for a moment he looked so much like Naruto sitting on the hospital roof after Pain's attack, exhausted and sad and older than 16, that her chest ached. All right, he said. Here's one. When my father sealed the Nine Tails inside a newborn baby, inside his own son, you were one of the 3 Sannin. The most powerful medical ninja in the world, you could have come back. You could have been there. You could have made sure that baby was taken care of, that the village didn't treat him like a plague rat. He paused. Why didn't you? The question hit her like one of her own punches. Not because it was unfair, because it wasn't. Because she'd asked it of herself 100 times in the years since she'd come back to Konoha. Since she'd met the bright, stubborn, impossibly kind boy who'd lost a bet with her and won her heart in the same afternoon. She opened her mouth to answer, and for the first time in a very long time, Tsunade Senju, the legendary sucker, the fifth Hokage, the woman who'd once punched through a castle wall, didn't have the words. The boat sailed on. The shore disappeared completely. And somewhere behind them, far away and getting farther, a broken boy who was only half of himself collapsed at the edge of a waterfall and felt the emptiness where his anger used to live. Naruto couldn't stand up. He'd been trying for 5 minutes. His legs wouldn't hold him. His arms shook when he pushed against the wet stone, and his chakra, felt like a river that had been dammed. It was there, somewhere, but he couldn't reach it properly. Every time he pulled at it, the flow stuttered and thinned, like trying to drink through a straw with a hole in it. Easy. B's hand caught his shoulder. The older man had recovered faster, Jinchuriki durability, decades of experience, and the Eight Tails actively healing his injuries from the inside. But his face was grim. Don't force it. Your system's in shock. That thing, your dark half, he ripped out a chunk of your chakra network when he separated. You push too hard right now, you could burn out what's left. I have to. Naruto's voice came out thin and ready, nothing like himself. He's out there. He's going to. I don't even know what he's going to do, but it's nothing good. I have to stop him. Kid, you can't stop a stiff breeze right now. I'm being straight with you. B lowered himself to sit beside Naruto on the wet stone. The waterfall thundered above them, indifferent. Juki says what happened shouldn't be possible. A dark manifestation is you. It's part of your psyche, your chakra, your identity. It's not supposed to be able to separate into a physical being. It'd be like your shadow standing up and walking away. And yet, Naruto echoed bitterly. His dark half's words. And yet. B rubbed his jaw where he'd hit the wall. He's got maybe half your chakra, half your physical capability, all of your skills, all of your knowledge. But here's the thing, Juki says a separated manifestation can't sustain itself, not indefinitely. The human body wasn't designed to run on half a soul. He'll burn out eventually. How eventually? Weeks, maybe a month. B paused. Maybe more if he's careful. And kid, he seems careful. That seal he dropped on me, I've never seen suppression work that fast. Your clan's blood, those sealing instincts, he's got them dialed up to 11. Naruto pressed his forehead to the cold stone. His mind was racing, but his thoughts kept scattering, refusing to organize. He could feel the gap where Dark Naruto had been not a physical gap, more like a missing frequency. His emotions felt muffled. The anger he should be feeling right now, the urgency, the fear, it was all there but dampened, like hearing music through a wall, because his anger was gone. Walking around in its own body. And without it, Naruto realized with a sick lurch, he wasn't quite himself. He was too calm, too passive. The part of him that would have already been sprinting after his dark half, screaming a battle cry, improvising a plan on the fly, that part had left with the rest. I need to contact Kakashi, he said. Or Granny Tsunade. Someone needs to know he's out there. The island turtle's communication seals are in the temple on the east ridge. Can you walk? Naruto tried again. This time, with B pulling him up, he managed to get his feet under him. The world tilted dangerously, then steadied. I can walk, he said. He didn't sound convincing. They made their way out of the waterfall cavern and into the tropical night. The island turtle's massive shell spread out around them. Dense forest, rocky hills, the illusion of solid ground over the back of a living creature the size of a small island. The air was warm and wet and smelled like salt and green things. Naruto walked slowly. Every step felt wrong. Not painful wrong, like wearing someone else's shoes. His body was his, but it didn't respond the way it should. His reflexes felt sluggish. His senses felt dulled. Even his vision seemed slightly off, like the color saturation had been turned down a notch. B. He said, halfway up the ridge trail. What he said to me, in the mindscape, about the village, about why people treated me the way they did. Yeah, was he right? B was quiet for a while. Their footsteps crunched on the trail. Night birds called from the canopy. You already know the answer to that, kid, B said finally. I grew up in Kumagakyur, Jinchuriki of the Eight Tails since I was a teenager. You think I don't know what it's like? The stares, the whispers, the way people cross the street when they see you coming. He adjusted Naruto's arm over his shoulder. Your dark half's right about what happened to you. Where he's wrong is what to do about it. What if he's not wrong about that either? Then we've got a bigger problem than I thought. B steered them around a fallen tree. But I've been where you are. When I first synced with Juki, I had to face my own darkness. All that pain, all that anger, I had to sit with it. Not fight it, not bury it. Sit with it until I understood it was mine and it was real and it mattered. That's what gives you the power to move forward. He didn't give me the chance to sit with it. He just left. Yeah, well, your darkness is more stubborn than mine was. Wonder where it gets that from. They reached the temple on the east ridge. It was a small stone structure, ancient, covered in moss and sealing scripts that glowed faintly in the dark. The communication seal inside was a complex array linked to relay points across the continent, old Uzumaki technology, maintained by Cloud Village monks. B activated it while Naruto leaned against the doorframe and tried not to pass out. The seal hummed, pulsed, and connected. The response came fast. Too fast. The relay was already hot, which meant someone else had been trying to reach them. B's face changed as the message came through. The playful, easy demeanor dropped away, and what was underneath was the elite shinobi, the veteran, the man who'd survived wars and betrayals and being hunted by his own village. Kid, he said, we've got a problem. What now? Your dark half didn't just leave. He went to the forward command base. B looked at him. He took Tsunade. The words didn't make sense for a second. Naruto's brain, his slower, duller, incomplete brain, processed them like a foreign language that needed translation. He took Tsunade. No, Naruto said, infiltrated the base. Disabled 8 Anbu and Shikaku Nara. Grabbed the Hokage and teleported out. Total engagement time, under 2 minutes. Nobody was killed. B read the message again, as if hoping he'd gotten it wrong. The search is already underway, but they've got nothing. No trail, no chakra signature, no direction of travel. No. Naruto pushed off the doorframe. No, this isn't, he can't, why would he take her? What does he want with Granny Tsunade? But even as he asked, he knew. The muffled, distant part of him that shared memories with his dark half stirred and whispered the answer. She could have come back. She could have been there. She could have made sure that baby was taken care of. Oh no, Naruto breathed. What? He's going to make her answer for it, for everything. For what the village did to me. Naruto's hands were trembling. Not with anger, he didn't have enough anger left for that, but with something worse. Guilt. Because somewhere inside him, in the deepest, most honest part of his heart, there was a small and terrible voice that said, good. He crushed that voice, stamped on it, buried it the way he'd buried everything, the way his dark half had accused him of doing. We have to find them, he said. I need to get off this island. I need to find him before he does something we can't come back from. You can barely stand. Then help me stand. Carry me if you have to, but we're going. Naruto looked at B with eyes that were still blue, still bright, but missing something essential. He's got half of me in there, half of who I am. And if I don't get it back, if I don't get him back, then I don't think I can be whole again. And neither can he. B studied him for a long moment. Then he sighed, deep and weary, the sigh of a man who'd been through this before and knew how it ended, messily, painfully, and with a lot of running. All right, B said. Let me send word to the search teams, tell them we're coming in, and kid. Yeah, when we find him, if we find him, you're gonna need more than just wanting him back. You're gonna need to give him a reason to come back. That's the part nobody can do for you. Naruto nodded. The night pressed in around them, and the ocean stretched out in every direction. Vast and dark and hiding somewhere within it, a boat with a stolen Hokage and a boy made of anger sailing toward a reckoning that had been building for 16 years. Far away, in the command base's ruins, Shikaku Nara finished briefing Kakashi Hatake via Hawk Messenger. and Kakashi stood in the dark, reading the scroll by moonlight. His visible eye moved across the words once, twice, 3 times. The Hokage has been taken by a physical manifestation of Naruto Uzumaki's dark psyche. All search protocols initiated. No leads. Requesting immediate assistance. This is not a drill. Kakashi lowered the scroll. He thought about his sensei, Minato, the 4th Hokage, who'd given his life to seal a demon inside his own son. He thought about that son, now split in half and lost. He thought about Tsunade, somewhere out there in the dark with a version of Naruto who had every reason to be angry and no reason to show mercy. He summoned Pakun. The little pug materialized on the branch beside him, wrinkled face already sniffing the air. "We've got a mission," Kakashi said. "Priority 1. I need every tracking resource we can pull from the Allied forces without compromising the war effort." Pakun's nose twitched. "What are we tracking?" Kakashi rolled up the scroll and tucked it into his vest. His hand lingered there for a moment, over his heart, where a different weight settled, the weight of another failure, another student he hadn't been enough for. "Naruto," he said quietly. "We're tracking Naruto." The moon hung fat and indifferent over the ocean, and the war ground on, and somewhere on black water under black sky, a boat sailed toward a destination that no one else knew existed, carrying a woman who had too many answers she'd never given, and a boy who had too many questions he'd never been allowed to ask. The reckoning had begun. Chapter 2. No trail, no trace. The hawk arrived at Kakashi's position 40 minutes before dawn. He was already moving. The moment Pakun had caught the faintest residual scent from the scroll, ozone and salt, and something metallic that the pug described as wrong chakra, like Naruto but curdled. Kakashi had broken camp and started south toward the coast at full speed. He'd been attached to a reserve coordination unit behind the Allied forces' second line, close enough to redirect quickly, far enough from the front that pulling him wouldn't leave an immediate gap. The second hawk caught up to him mid-sprint, carrying Shikaku's detailed after-action report. Kakashi read it on the move, leaping between tree branches with the scroll held in one hand, his Sharingan eye open and scanning the pre-dawn forest out of habit. The report was meticulous. Shikaku had reconstructed the entire attack in the 40 minutes since it happened, interviewing every conscious witness and mapping the sequence from power failure to disappearance. Kakashi read it twice, committed it to memory, and felt his stomach drop a little further with each detail. Simultaneous generator cuts, scent bomb diversions, sensor barrier disruption, infrastructure infiltration via drainage system. 8. Anbu neutralized non-lethally in under 3 seconds. Hokage-level suppression seal applied in physical contact. Transportation seal, single use, estimated range 5 to 10 km, Uzumaki variant design, the precision of it. That was what got him. This wasn't rage. This wasn't a berserker rampage from a creature of hatred. This was a planned military operation executed with the kind of cold efficiency that would have made Minato proud and Danzo jealous. Whoever Dark Naruto was, whatever he was, he thought like a strategist who happened to have the raw power of half a Jinchuriki. Kakashi had trained Naruto. He knew the boy's strengths: determination, creativity, an almost supernatural ability to improvise under pressure, and a stamina that could outlast anyone. He also knew Naruto's weaknesses: impatience, emotional decision-making, a tendency to charge headfirst into everything and figure it out on the way. Dark Naruto apparently had none of the weaknesses. That terrified him more than the power did. He reached the forward command base as the sky was turning gray. The place was a mess, not destroyed, but rattled. Broken windows in the command center, scorched perimeter where the diversionary explosive tags had detonated. Anbu sitting in rows outside the medical station, getting checked over by harried field medics. The whole base had the stunned, bewildered energy of a village hit by a freak storm, everyone walking around slightly dazed, asking each other if it had really happened, looking over their shoulders. Shikaku met him at the gate, The Nara clan head looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 hours. His ponytail was loose, his flak jacket was singed, and the shadows under his eyes were deep enough to hide in. "How bad?" Kakashi asked, falling into step beside him. "Physically, not bad. Concussions, bruised ribs, one dislocated shoulder. He wasn't trying to kill anyone, he was." Shikaku paused, searching for the word. "Efficient, surgically efficient. Every action had a purpose, every attack was measured to incapacitate without permanent harm. That's not a monster, Kakashi. That's a professional. That's Naruto. That's Naruto with the brakes off and a plan." Shikaku led him into the command center. The room had been partially cleaned up. Broken glass swept aside, map table righted, communication equipment being jury-rigged back together. But the burn mark on the floor where the transportation seal had activated was still there, black and stark against the wooden boards. "I've been running scenarios since it happened. You want the good news or the bad news? Bad first. Always bad first. The bad news is that he knows everything we know. Every tracking protocol, every search pattern, every Anbu code, every safe house location, every sensor type and their effective ranges. He has Naruto's complete knowledge of Konoha's intelligence and military infrastructure. Hunting him with standard methods is like trying to catch a fish who designed the net." Kakashi crouched beside the burn mark and touched it with 2 fingers. The residual chakra was almost gone, used up, consumed by the technique. No trail to follow from here. And the good news. He's operating on limited chakra. Juki's Jinchuriki, Killer Bee, sent word that the separation split Naruto's reserves roughly in half. That's still an enormous amount of chakra by any normal standard, but he doesn't have access to the Nine Tails the way Naruto does. His connection to the Biju is indirect, parasitic. He can draw on residual Nine Tails chakra that came with him during the split, but he can't replenish it. Everything he does costs him, and he can't get it back. So he's on a clock. A long clock. Weeks, maybe, but a clock. Shikaku straightened. "There's something else. I've been going over the intelligence he would have had access to, Naruto's briefings, the Allied forces deployment plans, logistical maps. Naruto sat in on 3 planning sessions before he was sent to the island Turtle. He knows our force disposition, our supply lines, our communication relay network." Kakashi closed his eye. "Which means he knows where the gaps are. Every single one. If he wanted to, he could sell that intelligence to the enemy and cripple the Allied forces before the first real battle." "He won't." Kakashi stood up. "That's not what this is about. He didn't take Tsunade to help the enemy. He took her because she represents the village's authority. The village's conscience. If he wanted chaos, he would have attacked the base with lethal force and disappeared. Instead, he was careful. Nobody died. He left us functional, damaged, embarrassed, but functional. So what does he want? What Naruto always wanted." Kakashi looked at the burn mark one more time. Someone to acknowledge his pain. Shikaku was quiet for a moment. Outside, the base was waking up around them, voices, footsteps, the clang of equipment being sorted. The war didn't stop because the Hawkage was missing. The war didn't stop for anything. "We need to keep this contained," Shikaku said. "If word gets out that the Hawkage was kidnapped from inside our own command structure by a version of our own Jinchuriki, the alliance fractures. The Raikage will lose his mind. The Tsuchikage will pull his forces back. Gaara," he stopped himself. "Gaara's the only one who might actually understand, and that's not enough to hold 4 other villages together. Who knows so far? Everyone on this base, that's about 300 people. I've issued a classification order, S-rank secrecy, no external communication about the incident without my direct authorization. It'll hold for a day or 2 after that," he shrugged. "Secrets rot, Kakashi, especially big ones." Kakashi nodded. "I need a team, small, fast people I trust. And I need everything you have on what he might have taken from the base before he grabbed Tsunade, supplies, equipment, documents." Shikaku pulled a folded sheet from his pocket. "Already compiled. Short answer, nothing. He didn't raid the armory or the supply depot. Whatever he needed, he sourced it externally, But here's what's interesting. He handed Kakashi the sheet. 3 supply caches along the island turtle's projected route were accessed in the 6 hours before the attack. Small quantities. Ration bars, medical supplies, sealing materials. The access codes used were legitimate Allied Forces codes assigned to Naruto's unit. He stopped to gather supplies on the way here. On a 3-hour sprint across open ocean, he paused at 3 different locations, took exactly what he needed and nothing more, and kept moving. Every stop was under 2 minutes. I timed it based on the cache access logs. Shikaku's voice carried a grudging professional respect that he clearly hated feeling. This wasn't impulsive, Kakashi. He'd been planning this since before the separation. Maybe since before Naruto ever sat down at that waterfall. That thought settled into Kakashi's chest like a stone. The idea that the darkness inside Naruto hadn't just been passively waiting to be confronted, that it had been planning, calculating, preparing for the moment it could break free and act, was deeply, fundamentally disturbing. Because it meant that on some level, in some locked room of his psyche, Naruto had been planning this too. "Get me that team," Kakashi said. "I want a tracker, a sensor type, a combat specialist, and someone who knows Naruto well enough to predict his behavior. I'll have names for you within the hour." Shikaku hesitated. "There's one more thing. Killer Bee's message," said Naruto. "The real Naruto, the light half, is in bad shape. Weakened, chakra destabilized, barely mobile. Bee's bringing him in, but it'll take time." How bad is bad shape? Bad enough that Bee used the word fragile, and I've never heard that man use that word about anything. Kakashi absorbed that, filed it, moved on because that was what you did in a war. You absorbed the terrible things and kept moving. "One more thing, Shikaku." "Yeah," Tsunade's strong. "Even without chakra, even suppressed, she's the most dangerous person in any room she's in. If Dark Naruto's keeping her alive, she's not sitting passively. She'll be working angles, testing limits, looking for opportunities." "I know. I'm saying she might not need us to save her. She might need us to get there before she saves herself, and the situation escalates into something nobody can walk back." Shikaku's expression was grim. "Or she might need us to get there before he tells her something that makes her not want to be saved." The 2 men looked at each other. The weight of that possibility hung between them like smoke. Kakashi turned and walked out into the pale morning light to start building his team. Tsunade woke to the sound of water dripping on stone. For a confused, murky moment, she thought she was back in the command center. The base had those leaky pipes in the east wing that maintenance kept promising to fix, and then her body reported in with a comprehensive catalog of wrongness. Her chakra was suppressed to a trickle. Her muscles ached with the deep fatigue of forced sleep. Her wrists were unbound, which surprised her, but there was a seal on her collarbone that hummed against her skin like a wasp trapped under paper. She opened her eyes. She was underground. A natural cavern, small, maybe 8 meters across and 5 high, with rough stone walls that wept moisture and a ceiling dark with mineral deposits. A single oil lantern sat on a flat rock near the center of the space, casting a warm circle of light that made the shadows dance. The floor was relatively smooth, covered with a thin layer of sand. There were supplies stacked neatly against one wall: sealed water containers, ration packs, a bedroll, medical supplies, scrolls, and what looked like a portable camp stove. This wasn't improvised. This was a prepared safe house. Dark Naruto sat cross-legged against the far wall, watching her. He'd changed clothes, or rather, he'd changed into a set of plain dark travel clothes that were folded in his supply stack. The black and orange were gone. He looked like any other young shinobi in nondescript gear, except for the dead white eyes and the whisker marks and the particular way he held himself, like a coiled spring wrapped in a relaxed posture. "You've been out about 4 hours," he said. "The suppression seal has a sedative function for the first activation. Won't happen again. Your body's adapting to the chakra restriction." Tsunade sat up slowly. The cavern tilted, steadied. She ran her fingers over the seal on her collarbone. She could feel the ink through her shirt, a complex pattern of intersecting lines and curves. Uzumaki work, definitely. Layered, self-reinforcing, designed to suppress chakra generation at the source rather than blocking its flow. Where are we? She asked. Her voice was rough. An island. Small, uninhabited, about 160 kilometers off the coast of the Land of Lightning. It doesn't have a name on any map because it doesn't have anything worth naming. No fresh water source, no arable land, no strategic value. I found it in old naval survey records that Kanoha's intelligence division archived and forgot about. How long have you been planning this? He regarded her evenly. In one form or another, since Naruto was 12 years old and started learning about the world that was hidden from him. The specifics, the base layout, the supply caches, this location, came together once we got access to the Allied Forces intelligence briefings. He paused. That's 5 months of planning if you want a number. 5 months. The darkness inside Naruto had been planning her abduction for 5 months, while the boy smiled and trained and called her granny and ate ramen and made promises to save the world. The thought made her skin crawl. That's not possible, she said. A dark manifestation doesn't plan, it reacts. It's an emotional construct. Is that what Killer Bee told him? That I'm an emotional construct? Dark Naruto's tone was mild. I'm a living being, Tsunade. I think, I plan, I feel. I'm not Naruto's anger given a face. I'm the entire half of his personality that he refuses to engage with. That includes his analytical mind, his survival instinct, his creativity, his capacity for long-term strategy. All the things your village could never see in the dead last because you were too busy seeing the demon. Tsunade bit back the response that came to her tongue. She was a captive with suppressed chakra in an unknown location. Antagonizing her captor wasn't strategy, it was ego, and whatever else she was, Tsunade Senju was a strategist. She shifted tactics. Water, he reached behind him and tossed her a sealed canteen. She caught it, checked the seal for tampering, found none, and drank. The water was clean and cold. There's food when you want it, he said. The rations aren't great, but they're nutritionally complete. I'm not starving you, I'm not torturing you. I'm not doing any of the things you're probably expecting. What I'm expecting is for you to tell me what happens next. What happens next is we talk. We talked on the boat. You asked me why I didn't come back for Naruto after the sealing. I don't recall you waiting for an answer. Because you didn't have one. You opened your mouth and nothing came out. That told me more than words would have. It landed. He was right, and the accuracy of it stung worse than a physical blow. She hadn't had an answer on the boat. She still didn't, not a good one. Not one that justified 13 years of absence while a child grew up alone in a village that hated him. Let me ask you something, she said. What does this accomplish? You've pulled the Hokage out of a war effort that needs her. People will die because I'm not there to coordinate. Medical resources I was managing will be misallocated. The alliance is weakened. If you claim to carry Naruto's memories and his values, you know he would never, don't. The word was quiet, but it cut through her speech like a blade through cloth. Don't use his values against me. I am his values, the ones he buried. The value that says my pain matters. The value that says someone should answer for what was done to me. The value that says a village that turns a child into a weapon and then punishes him for being one doesn't deserve unconditional loyalty. He leaned forward. The war will survive without you for a few days. You've built a competent command structure. Shikaku Nara is the smartest person in the alliance and he'll hold things together. You know that. He wasn't wrong about that either. She hated how often he wasn't wrong. A few days. She repeated, That's your timeline. That depends on you, on me. On whether you answer my questions honestly, on whether you're willing to hear things you've spent decades avoiding, on whether you can look at me, at what your village made, and engage with it like the leader you claim to be. He held her gaze. I didn't bring you here to hurt you, Tsunade. I brought you here because you're the only person in the world with the power and the history to do something about what happened to Naruto Uzumaki. And I don't trust you to do it, unless you're forced to sit with it. The lantern flickered. Somewhere far above them, through layers of stone and earth, the ocean crashed against the island's shore. Tsunade set down the canteen. Then ask your questions. Not yet. First, you're going to eat something and you're going to rest. I need you sharp for this, not exhausted and dehydrated and running on pride. He stood and moved to the supply stack, pulling out a ration pack and the camp stove. I also need to check the perimeter seals. This island is protected by a detection barrier that'll tell me if anyone gets within 5 kilometers. It's passive, doesn't emit a searchable signature, but I want to verify it's calibrated. You're leaving me alone? You're in a sealed cavern with no chakra. The entrance is a vertical shaft 14 meters above us, sealed with a barrier that responds to my chakra signature only. Even if you climb the walls, which you could, you're Tsunade, you'd hit the barrier and get knocked back down. He set the ration pack beside her. I'm not underestimating you. Please don't think I am. He crossed to the far wall where a series of handholds had been chiseled into the rock, another sign of advanced preparation, and began climbing. One more thing, Tsunade said. He paused halfway up the wall and looked down at her. When this is over, however it ends, I want you to know that I don't see a monster when I look at you. I see a boy in pain, and I'm sorry that the pain is real. Something shifted in his expression. Just for a second, a flicker, like a candle flame bending in a breeze, and then it was gone, and his face was stone again. Save the apologies, he said. I don't want sorry, I want answers. He climbed the rest of the way up and disappeared through the shaft entrance. The barrier hummed shut behind him, and Tsunade was alone. She looked at the ration pack, looked at the canteen, looked at the seal on her collarbone, feeling its steady drain on her reserves. Then she started examining the cavern, because she was Tsunade Senju, and she didn't sit and wait. She was a medic, the greatest medical ninja who had ever lived, and a medic's first instinct in any situation was to assess, diagnose, and treat. The cavern was her patient now. Every crack in the rock, every irregularity in the floor, every seam between natural stone and carved surface. She catalogued it all with the same meticulous attention she'd bring to a complex surgery. The suppression seal limited her chakra, but it didn't eliminate it entirely. She could still feel the faintest trickle of her own energy, like a barely open faucet. Not enough to enhance her strength or use medical ninjutsu, but enough to sense the structure of the seal itself. And she was intimately familiar with seal work. You didn't serve alongside Jiraiya and study under the third Hokage without learning the fundamentals. The seal on her collarbone was good. Better than good. It was the kind of work she'd seen only in the Uzumaki clan's archived texts, self-correcting, adaptive, resistant to standard countermeasures. But it had one characteristic that she recognized because she'd spent her career studying the interplay between seals and biology. It was keyed to her chakra signature. Specifically, it was calibrated to suppress the unique combination of frequencies that made up her personal chakra output, which meant it had been designed for her, not a generic suppression seal, but a bespoke one, tuned to Tsunade Senju's exact specifications. He'd studied her chakra signature, probably from the medical files that Konoha kept on all active shinobi, files that Naruto would have had access to as a registered ninja of the village. He'd taken her medical data and turned it into a cage. Clever, terrifyingly clever. But also, and this was the part that made her pause, caring, a generic suppression seal would have been rougher, less precise, more likely to cause chakra system damage over prolonged use. This one was designed to suppress her safely. No blowback, no network scarring, no long-term harm. He didn't want to hurt her. He'd said it, and the seal confirmed it, which made what he was doing both more understandable and more complicated, because a captor who cared about your well-being was harder to fight than one who didn't. She ate the ration pack, drank more water. Then she sat in the center of the cavern and began, slowly and carefully, testing the absolute limits of what her suppressed chakra could do. Kakashi's team assembled in the command center at midday. He'd been specific about what he needed, and Shikaku had delivered. 4 people stood around the map table under the temporary lighting, each one selected for a particular capability that Kakashi deemed essential for hunting someone who knew how to not be found. Shikamaru Nara leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He'd arrived from the 2nd Division's staging area an hour ago, pulled by his father's direct order, and he hadn't been told why until he walked into the room. The briefing took 3 minutes. Shikamaru's reaction took about 5 seconds of silence followed by a single word. Troublesome. But his eyes had gone sharp. Shikamaru heard the puzzle in the problem and couldn't help engaging with it. Kakashi had seen it happen in real time. The slouch didn't change, the bored expression didn't change, but somewhere behind those half-lidded eyes, a mind that could outthink almost anyone alive started turning. Kiba Inuzuka sat on the edge of the map table, Akamaru at his feet. The big dog's nose was working constantly, processing the scent samples that Shikaku's team had collected from the command center, residual traces from the fight, from the transportation seal, from the places Dark Naruto's hands had touched. It's Naruto's scent, Kiba said, frowning. But wrong. I don't know how to explain it. You know how Naruto smells like ramen and dirt and that weird fox chakra undertone? This is all of that but sour. Akamaru keeps sneezing. Akamaru whined in agreement. Hinata Hyuga stood quietly near the window, her Byakugan inactive but her posture attentive. She'd been pulled from the logistics core, where she'd been coordinating supply movements. Of everyone in the room, she'd taken the briefing the hardest. Her face had gone white, then red, then settled into a pale determination that reminded Kakashi uncomfortably of her father. She hadn't said anything yet, but she was listening to everything. The 4th member wasn't in the room. Sakura Haruno was still en route from the medical corps forward position, where she'd been performing emergency field surgery for the past 18 hours. Kakashi had sent for her despite the operational cost because she was the person alive who best understood both Naruto and Tsunade as people, not as assets or tactical elements, but as human beings. Here's what we know. Kakashi spread Shikaku's report across the map table. Dark Naruto took Tsunade northwest from the base via a transportation seal. Estimated range of the seal is 5 to 10 kilometers, which puts them somewhere in this arc. He drew a line on the coastal map with his finger. After that, we've got nothing. No chakra trail. No scent trail past the teleportation point. Kiba, your people already checked. Clean. Whatever he did at the landing site, he killed the scent. Akamaru hit the beach where the seal deposited them, and there's this weird garlic pepper thing everywhere. Commercial scent-masking agent, basic stuff, but it works against Ninken in the short term. He knows our tracking dogs use scent as primary, Shikamaru said from the wall. So he countered scent. He knows our sensor types use chakra signatures as primary, so he's suppressing his. He knows our Byakugan users can see through physical concealment, so he's not relying on physical concealment, he's using distance. He paused. What's the maximum effective range of the Byakugan for tracking a specific chakra signature? Hinata spoke for the first time. Dependent on the user. My range is approximately 10 kilometers for a known signature. Her voice was steady and clinical, field operative mode, emotions locked down. For Naruto's specific signature, which I know well, possibly farther, but if he's suppressing it actively, the effective range drops to less than half. So 5 kilometers, and if he's more than 5 clicks from any Byakugan user, he's invisible to that method too. Shikamaru closed his eyes, not sleeping, thinking. He countered scent tracking, chakra sensing, and visual detection. What's left? Intelligence analysis, Kakashi said. Which is why you're here. Shikamaru opened one eye. You want me to outthink Naruto? I want you to outthink the version of Naruto that actually pays attention and plans ahead. So the hard version. Shikamaru pushed off the wall and came to the table. He looked at the coastal map, at the arc Kakashi had drawn, at the surrounding geography. Islands, coastline, open water, the scattered dots of naval patrol routes and supply lines. He took a boat, Shikamaru said after about 10 seconds. How do you know that? Because it's what I do. A boat doesn't leave a trail on water. No footprints, no broken branches, no disturbed earth. If it's a small vessel with a basic sail, it has no chakra signature and no engine noise for sensor teams to detect. Ocean currents and wind would carry any residual sent away within minutes. And there are thousands of square kilometers of open water in every direction. He traced his finger along the coast. He teleported to the beach, transferred to a boat, and sailed. The question is where? Can we narrow it down? With what we have now, not much. He could be anywhere in a radius of. Let me think about current speeds and wind patterns last night. Shikamaru stared at the ceiling. A small sailboat in the conditions we had last night, departing around 0200 hours, running until dawn. He could be anywhere in about a 300-kilometer radius from the departure point. That's an absurd amount of ocean to search. Then we need a different approach, Kakashi said. We can't find him by tracking, so how do we find him? Shikamaru was quiet. His fingers drummed on the table's edge, a rhythm Kakashi recognized from dozens of briefings, the physical expression of a mind running calculations at full speed. By understanding what he needs, Shikamaru said finally. He can't survive indefinitely on what he took from those supply caches. He needs food, water, shelter. He needs a location that's secluded enough to avoid detection but accessible enough that he could prepare it in advance. He needs. Shikamaru stopped. Wait. He prepared it in advance. That means he visited the location before the separation. Which means Naruto visited the location. Naruto's been on the island turtle for weeks. Before that, during the preparation period. Think, where did Naruto go in the 5 months between joining the Allied forces, planning, and being sent to the island turtle? Every mission, every errand, every solo trip. Kakashi looked at Shikaku, who was standing in the doorway listening. The older Nara was already moving, turning to call for Naruto's mission logs. We should also consider route infrastructure, Shikamaru added. Old foundations, safe houses, abandoned Anbu posts, decommissioned supply depots. Naruto wouldn't have known about those, but Dark Naruto has access to the same memories, and Naruto sat in on intelligence briefings where classified facility locations were discussed. I can pull the declassified route facility list, Shikaku said from the doorway. But the classified ones, pull what you can. I'll fill in the gaps. Shikamaru's eyes were fully open now, sharp and alive with the particular energy he only showed when a problem was genuinely worthy of his attention. He's smart, I'll give him that, but smart people make patterns and patterns can be read. The door opened and Sakura walked in. She looked terrible. Not injured, exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, field medic's coat still spattered with someone else's blood, hair pulled back in a messy knot. She'd clearly run the last leg of the journey from the medical corps. Her eyes swept the room, Kakashi, Shikamaru, Kiba, Hinata, and the absence of the person they were all gathered to find tightened her expression into something fierce. I got your message, she said to Kakashi. Is it true, all of it? All of it. Sakura pulled out a chair, sat down hard, and pressed her palms flat on the table. Okay, she said. Tell me everything, from the beginning, don't leave anything out. Kakashi told her. The waterfall of truth, the failed confrontation, the separation, the attack on the command base, the abduction. Sakura listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. She was typically the first to ask questions, to challenge, to push back. But she sat still and absorbed it all, and when Kakashi finished, she was quiet for a long moment. The suppression seal, she said. You said he designed it specifically for Tsunade-sama's chakra signature? Based on Shikaku's analysis, yes. Then he accessed her medical file, her complete chakra profile. That's restricted information, S-rank clearance. She looked at Kakashi. Naruto shouldn't have had access to that. He shouldn't have. But classified files were stored in the same secure archive as the Allied Forces intelligence briefings. If Naruto, or his dark half, found a way to access additional files during a legitimate briefing session. Kakashi left the implication hanging. He browsed while no one was looking, Kiba said. Classic Naruto move, except usually he's sneaking peeks at test answers, not stealing medical data. This isn't funny, Kiba, Sakura said. I know it's not. Kiba's voice dropped the levity immediately. I know, it's Naruto. Some version of Naruto, and he's out there doing this and it's. He scratched behind Akamaru's ears. It's hard to think about. The room was quiet for a moment. The weight of it settled on all of them, the particular awful weight of hunting a friend. Or something that used to be part of a friend. The lines were blurry, and nobody wanted to look at them too closely. There's a medical dimension to this, Sakura said, pulling the conversation forward with the brisk efficiency of someone who'd learned to function through emotional devastation. Killer Bee's assessment is that the separated manifestation is unstable. A human body and chakra network aren't designed to function on half a soul. He'll degrade over time, physically and mentally. How does that manifest? Shikamaru asked. Without examining him directly, I can't be sure. But based on what I know about chakra network disruption and identity dissociation, which admittedly nobody's ever seen at this scale, I'd expect increasing physical symptoms first. Fatigue, tremors, temperature dysregulation. Then cognitive symptoms. Memory fragmentation, emotional volatility, impaired judgment. She paused. The irony is that as he degrades, he becomes more dangerous, not less. A deteriorating mind with that much power and that much anger. How long before it gets bad? Kakashi asked. If B's estimate of weeks to a month is accurate, I'd say noticeable degradation within 10 to 14 days. Significant impairment within 3 weeks. After that, Sakura shook her head. After that, we're not dealing with a rational actor anymore. We're dealing with a dying one. The timeline hung over the table like a countdown. They had days, not weeks, not months, days, before this situation went from dangerous to catastrophic. Then we work fast, Kakashi said. Shikamaru, focus on the intelligence angle, go through Naruto's movements for the past 5 months. Every trip, every mission, every hour unaccounted for. Cross-reference with the route facility list and any other off-grid locations in the operational area. Find me a pattern. On it. Kiba, Akamaru, I need you working the coastline. Every harbor, every dock, every fisherman's landing in a 50-kilometer radius of the departure point. He took a boat. Boats come from somewhere. Someone sold it to him or he stole it, and either way, there's a trail. We'll find it. Hinata. I'll deploy my Byakugan along the coastal sweep with Kiba, she said before he could finish. And I'd like to request permission to attempt a long-range scan from an elevated position. If he's within 20 kilometers of the coast at any point, even briefly, I may catch a flicker. Granted. Sakura, I need 2 things from you. First, a full medical analysis of what we can expect from Dark Naruto's deterioration, timeline, symptoms, behavioral predictions. I need to know what we're dealing with as it gets worse. And second, Naruto, the real Naruto, is coming in with Killer Bee. He's in bad shape. I need you to assess him and figure out what we need to do to get him functional. Sakura's jaw tightened. Define functional. Able to face his other half. Because at the end of this, however we find them, wherever they are, Naruto has to be there. This doesn't end with a rescue team kicking down a door. This ends with Naruto. The team dispersed. Shikamaru to the intelligence archive, Kiba and Hinata to the coast, Sakura to the medical station to prepare for Naruto's arrival. Kakashi stood alone in the command center, looking at the burn mark on the floor, the last trace of Tsunade's presence, already fading. He summoned Pakan again. I need you to do something different, he told the pug. Don't track scent, track behavior. I want you to go to every place in this region where a person could hide a small boat. Not harbors, coves, sea caves, hidden inlets. Places a ninja would use, not a fisherman. You know what those look like. I've been tracking ninja for longer than you've been alive, boss. I know what a hide site looks like. Start with the coast northwest of here. That's the direction he went after the teleportation. Pakan sniffed the air one more time, filing the wrong Naruto, sent into his memory alongside 1,000 other tracking targets, and disappeared over the wall. Kakashi leaned on the map table and stared at the vast blue nothing of the ocean on the chart. Somewhere out there, in all that water, Tsunade was waiting. And Dark Naruto was asking questions that nobody had ever wanted to answer. Sensei, Kakashi thought, and the word was directed at a dead man, at a stone face on a mountain far away. Your son needed more than what we gave him. And now the part of him that knows that is loose in the world, and I don't know how to fix it. No answer came. Answers never came from the dead. That was the whole problem. 200 kilometers away, in a cavern beneath an unnamed island, the conversation began. Tsunade had eaten, rested as much as her racing mind would allow, and finished her assessment of the cavern. Conclusions. The space was structurally sound, the barrier at the top of the shaft was beyond her suppressed capacity to breach, and the seal on her collarbone was too well designed to remove without tools and time she didn't have. She was, for the moment, stuck, and she was furious about it. But fury without an outlet was just energy, and Tsunade had spent a lifetime learning to redirect energy into useful channels. So when Dark Naruto descended the shaft and settled cross-legged against the far wall with the particular body language of someone who was ready to talk, she was ready too. "Your perimeter seal's holding up?" she asked. "Clean, nothing within detection range." He set a small pack beside him. He'd been topside for nearly an hour. "There's a storm coming in from the northeast, should hit by tonight." "That's good for us. Rough seas will discourage naval patrols, and the weather will scatter any aerial search patterns." "You factored weather into your plan?" "I factored everything into my plan." He said it without arrogance, just a flat statement of fact. "I had 5 months, Tsunade." 5 months of watching through Naruto's eyes while he smiled and trained and told everyone he was fine. 5 months of planning what I'd do when I finally had the chance to act. You think I left anything to chance? She filed that away. 5 months of full consciousness inside Naruto's psyche, watching, planning, waiting. That was a long time to be a prisoner in your own body, not unlike her own years of self-imposed exile, she thought. Running from Konoha, from her responsibilities, from the ghosts of everyone she'd lost. She'd been a prisoner of her own grief for longer than Dark Naruto had been a prisoner of Naruto's suppression. The parallel was uncomfortable. She set it aside. "Last night you asked me why I didn't come back," she said. "After the sealing, after Minato and Kushina died. And you didn't answer." "I'm answering now." She drew a breath. "I didn't come back because I was broken. Dan was dead. Nowaki was dead. And then Minato. I'd known Minato since he was a kid, since he was Jiraiya's bright-eyed student who was going to change the world. When he died, something in me just stopped. I couldn't face Konoha. I couldn't face the people who would look at me and expect me to be strong, to be a Sannin, to be useful. So I ran. And Naruto? I didn't know about Naruto. Not specifically. I knew a child had been made the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. I heard about it the way you hear about distant tragedies, through second-hand reports and rumor. I didn't know it was Minato's son until years later, and by then, I'd been gone so long that coming back felt impossible. But not because of Naruto, because of you. Yes, the word cost her something. Because of me, my grief, my weakness. I chose my own pain over a child who needed someone, and I will carry that for the rest of my life. Dark Naruto studied her. The lantern light caught the planes of his face and made him look older than 16, or maybe that was just the expression, the weight behind those colorless eyes. "That's honest," he said. "More honest than I expected. I'm not going to lie to you. If you're really part of Naruto, then you know I'm a terrible liar." The faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile, the ghost of one. "Here's my problem with your answer," he said. "You were broken, I understand broken, but you were also one of the most powerful people in the world. You had resources, connections, influence. Even from a distance, even without coming back to Konoha, you could have done something. You could have sent money. You could have contacted the third Hokage and demanded that the Jinchuriki child be properly cared for. You could have used your network to check on him. You didn't do any of that. No. Because it wasn't just grief, was it? It was also convenience. It was easier not to know. Easier to gamble and drink and pretend the world you left behind wasn't your responsibility." He wasn't attacking now. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, which made it worse. You weren't the only one, the whole village did it. The third Hokage knew. Jiraiya knew. Kakashi knew. They all knew there was a child growing up alone and hated, and they all found reasons not to fix it. The third was too old, too tired, too committed to the political balance. Jiraiya was too important for intelligence work to come home. Kakashi was too broken by his own trauma to take on a student. Everyone had a reason. And a little boy grew up eating expired food in an empty apartment because everyone's reasons were more important than him. Tsunade's hands were clenched in her lap. Her nails dug into her palms hard enough to draw blood, and she didn't care, because he was right. Every word was a scalpel, precise and sterile, and the incisions they made went all the way down. "What do you want me to say?" she asked. "I want you to sit with it. I want you to feel what he felt, what I felt, every single day for 13 years. The loneliness, that's so total it becomes your whole world, until you can't even imagine anything else. The confusion of a child who doesn't understand why adults look at him with hatred. The rage that builds up year after year with nowhere to go because if you let it out, they'll say the fox is taking over, and then they'll really have a reason to lock you away." His voice didn't waver. "I want you to understand that Naruto's forgiveness, that bright, beautiful, impossible forgiveness that everyone praises, isn't strength. It's a survival mechanism. He forgave the village because the alternative was feeling what I feel, and that would have destroyed him. And what do you feel?" Everything he wouldn't let himself feel. 13 years of it, compressed and concentrated, and it's so much, Tsunade. It's so much that sometimes I can barely see past it. For the first time, something raw crept into his voice. Not vulnerability. He'd never allow vulnerability, but a crack in the armor, a glimpse of the magma underneath. "Do you know what it's like to be 5 years old and to have an adult, a grown man, a shinobi of the village your father died to protect, spit on you in the street? And then to smile about it later, because smiling is the only thing that keeps you from coming apart." She didn't answer. She didn't trust her voice. "Do you know what it's like to graduate from the academy and have your teacher tell you that you barely passed because nobody expected you to be capable of anything? And the teacher, Uruka, is the kind one. He's the best you've got. Everyone else thinks you should have been kept out of the program entirely. A Jinchuriki who can't even do a basic clone technique. What a failure. What a waste of a perfectly good demon." His hands were trembling, not with weakness, with feeling. The cavern felt smaller, the air thicker, as if his emotions were a physical pressure that filled the space. "I didn't bring you here to make you cry," he said, pulling himself back from the edge. The trembling stopped. The mask settled back into place. "I brought you here because you're the Hokage. You're the one person who can change the system, the laws, the policies, the institutional rot that allowed a child to be abused by the village that was supposed to protect him. And I don't trust you to do it based on warm feelings and good intentions, because warm feelings and good intentions are what every Hokage has had, and nothing has ever changed. What do you want me to change? We'll get to that. Right now, I want you to answer another question. Ask it." The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the god of shinobi, the man who was supposed to be Naruto's protector. Dark Naruto's eyes were fixed on hers. Why did he let it happen? Not the big picture political reasons, not the he was balancing village stability excuse. "I want to know why a man who supposedly loved Naruto like a grandson let him grow up in a one-room apartment with no family, no guardian, no support system beyond a monthly stipend that barely covered rent and groceries." Tsunade's throat was tight. She'd known Hiruzen, known him as a teacher, a leader, a complicated old man who carried the weight of a village on shoulders that bent a little more each year. She'd respected him. She'd also, in the years since his death, come to question things about his leadership that she'd taken for granted. "Hiruzen was a product of his era," she said carefully. "That's not an answer, that's an excuse. Let me finish." She held up a hand, a habit from briefings, from command, and she saw him notice it. She dropped the hand. Hiruzen grew up in a world where Jinchuriki were weapons. Every village had them, and every village treated them the same way. as assets to be managed, not children to be raised. He was better than most. He passed the Third's law prohibiting anyone from telling the younger generation about Naruto's status. He visited Naruto personally. He made sure the boy had housing and basic necessities. Housing, basic necessities. Dark Naruto repeated the words like they tasted of ash. You're describing a kennel. Feed the animal, shelter the animal, make sure the animal doesn't die before it's useful. That's not. Tsunade stopped herself, heard what she'd been saying, heard how it sounded. You're right, that's exactly what it was. Thank you for hearing it. The silence stretched. The lantern flickered as somewhere above them, the approaching storm's first winds found their way into the shaft. Hiruzen loved Naruto, Tsunade said. I believe that genuinely, but he also failed him, and the failure wasn't just personal, it was institutional. He had the power to assign Naruto a guardian family. He had the power to integrate Naruto into a clan structure that would have given him support and protection. He had the power to fund proper counseling, proper education, proper parenting for a child who had none. He didn't do any of those things because the political cost was too high. The council would have objected, the clans would have resisted, Danzo would have. Danzo? The name came out of Dark Naruto's mouth like poison. Don't get me started on Danzo. I wasn't planning to. Good. Because that's a conversation that would last days, and I don't have the patience for it right now. He exhaled slowly. So the third Hokage failed Naruto because the politics were too hard, and you, the fifth Hokage, what have you changed since you took the seat? The question hit center mass. Tsunade opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Not enough, she said. No, he agreed. Not enough. The storm was closer now. She could hear it, a low, building moan in the shaft above them, the sound of wind and approaching rain. The lantern flame danced. I've thought about this for 5 months, Dark Naruto said. About what enough would look like. Not revenge, not destruction. I know that's what you expect from me, the angry dark half, lashing out, burning it all down. But I'm not stupid, and I'm not a caricature. I know that destroying the village wouldn't help Naruto. It wouldn't help anyone. Then what? Reform. Real, structural, permanent reform. Written into law, not dependent on the goodwill of whoever happens to be Hokage. I have a list. A list. Policies, protections. Changes to how Konoha, and ideally the entire alliance, treats its Jinchuriki, its orphans, its weapon children. Changes that would have prevented what happened to Naruto from ever happening to anyone else. He reached into his pack and pulled out a scroll. Not a jutsu scroll, a document, dense with handwriting, page after page of detailed proposals. He tossed it to her. Tsunade caught it and unrolled the first section. Her eyes scanned the opening lines and widened. The document was meticulous. Organized by category? Jinchuriki rights, orphan welfare, institutional oversight, mental health provisions, civilian shinobi relations regarding Biju hosts. Each section contained specific policy proposals with implementation frameworks, legal precedents drawn from existing Fire Country law, cost estimates, and projected outcomes. It wasn't the work of an angry teenager. It was the work of a policy mind, someone who understood governance, understood bureaucracy, understood how to make change stick. Someone who'd spent 5 months studying Konoha's legal and administrative structure through Naruto's access and had synthesized it into a comprehensive reform package. You wrote this, she said. Who else? This is serious work. I'm a serious person. He leaned back against the wall. Naruto never would have written that. Naruto would have marched into the Hokage's office and demanded change with his fists and his heart and his sheer force of will. And maybe it would have worked because he's Naruto and people can't say no to him. But what happens when he's gone? What happens when the next Hokage isn't someone who loves him? The goodwill fades, the promises are forgotten, the next Jinchuriki child grows up exactly the way he did. Tsunade kept reading. The more she read, the more something uncomfortable settled in her chest, not guilt, though there was that too. Respect. Grudging, unwilling, deeply inconvenient respect for the mind that had produced this document. I need time with this, she said. You have time, that's the whole point. He stood and stretched, a gesture so perfectly Naruto that her heart lurched. The storm's going to be bad. I'm going to secure the topside camp. You read. Tomorrow we go through it section by section and you're going to tell me what's feasible, what's not, and why. And for every item you reject, you're going to propose an alternative that achieves the same goal. You're negotiating with me. I'm doing what someone should have done 16 years ago, using the system to protect the people the system failed. He moved to the wall and started climbing. Get some sleep after you read. You look terrible. You kidnapped me. I'm allowed to look terrible. That almost smile again, that flicker at the corner of his mouth that was so much like Naruto it physically hurt. Fair enough, he said, and disappeared up the shaft. Tsunade sat alone with the scroll in her lap, and the storm building overhead and the lantern burning steady in the dark. She read. She read all of it, every word, every proposal, every carefully reasoned argument. And when she was done, she sat for a long time with her hands flat on the scroll and her eyes closed, and the taste of salt on her lips that might have been sea air or might have been something else, because the document was good. It was really, really good. And the boy who'd written it, the angry, brilliant, broken boy who'd torn himself free from the person she loved because he couldn't bear to be buried anymore, deserved better than what the world had given him, they all did. Every Jinchuriki. Every orphan. Every child the shinobi system had chewed up and spit out. Tomorrow, she'd negotiate. She'd push back. She'd apply her decades of political experience to testing every proposal against the hard reality of governance. She owed him that, the respect of genuine engagement, not dismissal. But tonight, she let herself feel it. The full weight of what Konoha had done to Naruto Uzumaki, documented in the handwriting of his own rage. And for the first time since the Hokage's hat had been placed on her head, Tsunade Senju wondered if she'd been leading the village or just maintaining the machine that ate its children. The storm hit at midnight. Rain hammered the island like artillery fire, and the sea around it rose in massive swells that would have swamped any search vessel within 50 kilometers. Thunder rolled across the ocean in continuous waves, and lightning strobed the sky white. In the cavern, Tsunade slept. Restlessly, but she slept. The exhaustion won out over the anger and the guilt and the impossibility of her situation. Above her, on the surface, Dark Naruto sat in the rain. He sat on the island's highest point, a rocky outcrop barely 10 meters above sea level, and let the storm wash over him. The rain was cold and heavy and real, and he tilted his face up into it with an expression that no one was there to see. It wasn't peace. He didn't have peace. But it was sensation. Physical, immediate, undeniable proof that he was alive, that he had a body, that the wind and the rain touched him the same way they touched everyone else. He held up his hand and watched the water stream across his skin. His fingers trembled, just slightly, a fine tremor that hadn't been there yesterday. The separation was taking its toll. He could feel it in the margins, a slight heaviness in his limbs, a slight fog at the edges of his thoughts. Nothing critical yet, nothing that would stop him. But the clock was ticking. He had enough time. He'd calculated it. Enough time to make Tsunade understand, to get her commitment, to ensure the reforms would happen regardless of what became of him. Because he was under no illusions about his own survival. A half-being couldn't persist. Eventually, the body would fail, the chakra would gutter out, and he'd dissolve back into nothing, unless Naruto came. Unless the other half, the bright half, the forgiving half, the half the world loved, found him more actions write the next chapter now. Chapter 3. The cage has two doors. Tsunade woke to silence. Not the comfortable silence of sleep fading naturally, but the sudden, sharp silence of someone who'd been a combat medic for decades and whose body knew the difference between quiet and too quiet. The storm had passed. The dripping from the shaft above had slowed to nothing. The lantern had burned down to a low amber glow, barely enough to see by, and the cavern felt different, staler, heavier, as if the air pressure had shifted. She lay still for 10 seconds, cataloging. Chakra suppression seal, still active, still draining. Physical condition: stiff, sore, dehydrated but functional. Mental state: sharp. She'd slept harder than she'd expected, 4, maybe 5 hours, and the rest had given her mind the reset it needed. The scroll was beside her on the bedroll, where she'd fallen asleep reading it for the 3rd time. Dark Naruto's reform proposals. She dreamed about them. Not the content, but the handwriting, the precise, angular characters that were Naruto's hand but controlled, deliberate, nothing like the boy's usual messy scrawl. Even his penmanship was a rebuke. This is what I could have been if someone had cared enough to teach me. She sat up. The cavern was empty. No sign of Dark Naruto, no sound from the shaft. She was alone. Her hands went to work immediately. She'd been planning this since her first assessment of the cavern 12 hours ago. The suppression seal on her collarbone was bespoke, elegant, and extremely effective at dampening her chakra generation. But Tsunade hadn't spent 40 years as a medical ninja without learning a few things about the relationship between seals and biology that most Fuinjutsu specialists never considered. A chakra suppression seal worked by interfering with the tenketsu, the chakra release points in the body. It created a standing interference pattern that disrupted the natural flow of chakra from the network to the external world. Standard countermeasure: overwhelm the seal with raw chakra output, brute force your way through the interference. That was what most shinobi would try, and it was exactly what this seal was designed to prevent. But Tsunade wasn't most shinobi. She was a medical specialist who understood the human chakra network at a cellular level, and she knew something that very few people in the world knew. You could reroute chakra through non-standard pathways. The body had 361 tenketsu. A suppression seal, even a good one, could only target the primary network, the 210 major points that carried the bulk of chakra flow. The remaining 151 minor points were too small, too irregular, too variable between individuals to map reliably. They carried barely enough chakra to notice under normal circumstances, but Tsunade had spent her career mapping those minor points. She'd used them in surgeries, in emergency field medicine, in situations where the primary network was damaged and she needed alternative routes to keep a patient alive. She knew her own minor tenketsu like she knew her own bones. She couldn't get much. A fraction of her normal output, maybe 3%, barely enough to light a candle. But 3% of Tsunade Senju's reserves was still more than most genin could muster on their best day. She spent 20 minutes in the dark, eyes closed, breathing slow and even, threading gossamer-thin streams of chakra through pathways that the seal couldn't see. It hurt. The minor tenketsu weren't designed for this kind of deliberate use, and forcing chakra through them felt like pushing wire through a needle, slow, precise, and agonizing if you slipped. But she didn't slip. She was Tsunade. By the end of the 20 minutes, she had enough chakra concentrated in her right hand to deliver a single enhanced strike. Not her full strength, not even close, but enough to crack stone. And stone was what stood between her and the shaft. She looked up at the barrier sealing the entrance 14 meters above her. Dark Naruto had said it responded only to his chakra signature. That was true for the seal's intended function, opening and closing the barrier on command. But every seal was a physical construct as well as a chakra construct, and physical constructs had physical anchor points. She'd found the anchor points during her initial assessment. 4 of them, embedded in the rock at the shaft's rim, connected by lines of sea-link that formed the barrier's skeleton. Destroy the anchors, destroy the barrier. Tsunade stood, rolled her shoulders, flexed the fingers of her right hand, and felt the concentrated chakra pulse like a second heartbeat in her palm. She was going to have one shot. The effort of channeling through the minor tenketsu would exhaust what little she'd gathered, and it would take hours to build up again. One strike. She had to make it count. She started climbing. The handholds Dark Naruto had chiseled into the wall were spaced for someone his height. Tsunade was taller, which helped, but without chakra-enhanced grip strength, the climb was genuinely difficult. Her fingers ached, her arms burned. 14 meters straight up, nothing but fingertips and willpower. She reached the top in 6 minutes. The barrier shimmered an inch from her face. A translucent membrane of shaped chakra, faintly visible in the dim light, humming at a frequency she could feel in her teeth. The anchor points were embedded in the rock at the 4 cardinal positions around the shaft's rim. She clung to the wall with her left hand and drew back her right. Aimed for the anchor point at the 12 o'clock position, the primary anchor, the one that would destabilize the entire array if it shattered. She punched. The stone cracked. The anchor point, a small seal tag pressed into a carved depression, shattered under the impact, and the barrier flickered wildly, its hum rising to a whine. The other 3 anchors flared bright as they tried to compensate for the lost node, but one node wasn't enough to drop it. The barrier held. Tsunade hung on the wall, arm aching, chakra spent, and felt the barrier resettle into a new configuration, weaker, unstable, but intact. 3 anchor points could maintain it. She'd need to destroy at least one more. She didn't have another strike in her. The minor tenketsu were empty, the pathways inflamed from use, and her body was trembling from the climb and the exertion. "Damn it," she breathed. Then she heard footsteps above her. Not hurried, measured, deliberate, the footsteps of someone who'd felt the barrier fluctuate and already knew what he'd find. Dark Naruto's face appeared at the top of the shaft, looking down at her from the other side of the barrier. Rain-wet, tired, those white eyes taking in the damaged anchor point, her position on the wall, the chakra burns on her right hand. 3%, he said. She blinked. "What? You rerouted through minor tenketsu. Clever, I didn't account for that. I estimated you might get 2% of your reserves through the non-standard pathways. You got 3. I underestimated you." He crouched at the edge. "You always did perform above projections." Tsunade's arms were shaking. She couldn't hold this position much longer, and the 14-meter drop below her wasn't the kind of fall you walked away from with suppressed chakra. "Are you going to help me down or watch me fall?" she said. He reached through the barrier, it parted for his hand like water, and caught her wrist. His grip was firm and warm, and she hated how familiar it felt. Naruto's hand, Naruto's calluses, Naruto's strength. He pulled her up and through the barrier in one smooth motion, and she stumbled onto the island's surface for the first time, morning light. Pale gray sky, post-storm clouds scattered like torn paper. The island was small. She could see both coasts from where she stood, rocky shores maybe 200 meters apart, with sparse vegetation and tide pools and nothing else. The ocean stretched in every direction, flat and empty. No ships. No land. Nothing. She'd known it would be remote. Seeing it confirmed was different. Dark Naruto released her wrist and stepped back. He didn't look angry. He looked impressed. And something else. Something she recognized, because she'd seen it on Naruto's face 100 times. A particular combination of respect and stubbornness that meant, I expected this and I planned for it, and I'm not going to let it change anything. "If you'd gotten through the barrier, then what?" he asked. "Swim 160 kilometers with suppressed chakra. Signal for help with 3% of your reserves. The nearest land mass is beyond your range for any conceivable jutsu in your current state. I would have figured something out." "Yeah," the almost smile again, painful. "You would have tried. That's the most Tsunade thing I can imagine." She stood on the rocky ground and breathed real air for the first time in hours. Salt, rain, the mineral smell of wet stone. The wind was sharp and cold against her skin, and she shivered. Her clothes were still the ones she'd been wearing in the command center, not designed for exposure. He noticed. Reached into a pack near the shaft entrance and pulled out a heavy weather cloak. Standard shinobi issue, nothing special. "Here, the temperature's going to drop today." She took it, put it on, hated that she needed it. "I'll reinforce the barrier," he said. 5 anchor points this time, and I'll add secondary suppression to the minor tenketsu routes you used. It won't hurt you. I'll calibrate it the same way I did the primary seal, but you won't get that trick twice. I figured. For what it's worth, that was genuinely impressive. The minor tenketsu reroute is a technique I've never seen anyone attempt on themselves. You developed it for surgical applications. Field surgery, when a patient's primary network is compromised and you need to deliver medical chakra through alternative. She caught herself, stopped. I'm not explaining my techniques to my kidnapper. You just did. He turned toward the shaft. Come back down when you're ready. I'll repair the barrier and then we should continue our discussion. I want to go through the reform proposals section by section. I found problems with several of them. Good, that's the point. He dropped into the shaft. A moment later, the barrier reformed. Stronger now, she could feel the difference, and she was alone on the surface. Tsunade stood in the gray morning light and turned in a slow circle. Ocean, 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 ocean. A speck of rock in an infinity of water, with no way to signal and no way to travel and a suppression seal that her best effort had barely dented. He was stuck. Genuinely, completely stuck. The realization should have been crushing. Instead, it was oddly clarifying. She couldn't escape. She couldn't fight. She couldn't signal for help. The only tool she had left was her mind, her experience, and her willingness to engage. Fine. She'd beaten enemies before with nothing but those three things. She'd beat this one too. Not by breaking free, but by understanding him well enough to change the terms of her captivity. She pulled the cloak tight against the wind and climbed back down into the shaft. 200 kilometers southeast, the search was expanding and going nowhere. Kiba and Akamaru had covered every meter of coastline within a 50-kilometer radius of the teleportation site. They'd found the beach where the seal had deposited Dark Naruto and Tsunade. The scent-masking agent was still pungent enough to make Akamaru sneeze from 100 meters, and they'd found drag marks in the sand where a small boat had been launched. That was it. No further trail. No additional scent markers. No witnesses. The fishing villages along the coast reported nothing, no strangers, no unusual boats, no disturbances. Either Dark Naruto had acquired his vessel elsewhere and sailed it in, or he'd created it somehow. Shadow clone construction, maybe. He had enough chakra for it. Kiba reported in to Kakashi at midday, tired and frustrated, Akamaru trailing behind him with his tail low. Nothing, Kakashi-sensei. I've never seen a trail this clean. It's like they hit the water and stopped existing. Kakashi nodded. He'd expected this. Hoped otherwise, but expected this. Hinata's aerial survey had been similarly fruitless. She'd spent 3 hours on the highest point in the area with her Byakugan active at maximum range, scanning every degree of the compass for Naruto's chakra signature or any variant of it. Nothing. Either Dark Naruto was beyond her range, suppressing his signature below detection threshold, or both. He's too far out, Hinata said when she came down. Her eyes were red with strain. Extended Byakugan use at maximum range was physically punishing. I'm sorry, Kakashi-sensei. If I could get closer, if we had any idea what direction, it's not a failure, Hinata. It's data. We know he's more than 20 kilometers from the coast, which narrows the search area by eliminating the near shore. Kakashi managed to sound more optimistic about this than he felt. We'll work with what we have. What they had was Shikamaru. The young Nara had commandeered a corner of the intelligence archive, a repurposed storage room in the command base, and turned it into something that looked like the inside of a conspiracy theorist's mind. Maps covered every wall, layered and annotated, connected by strings and pins. Naruto's mission logs were spread across the central table alongside Allied forces briefing records, supply chain manifests, classified facility lists, and naval survey charts. When Kakashi found him, Shikamaru was standing in the middle of all of it with his hands in his trademark thinking position, fingertips touching, head bowed, eyes half closed. He'd been standing like that for 40 minutes, according to the Chunin Shikaku had assigned to help him. Don't interrupt him, the Chunin whispered. He does this thing where he goes quiet and then... I know, Kakashi said. He'd seen Shikamaru work before. He leaned against the doorframe and waited. 3 more minutes passed. Then Shikamaru's eyes opened, and they had that particular light in them, the one that meant the shadow had caught something. Root, he said. What about Root? Shikamaru crossed to the wall map and tapped a cluster of pins he'd placed along the coast of the Land of Lightning. Danzo ran a network of off-grid facilities throughout the 5 great nations. Black sites, intelligence caches, training facilities, interrogation rooms, supply depots. Most of them were decommissioned after his death and catalogued by Allied Forces intelligence. Keyword: most? Some weren't. The known facility list accounts for 47 root installations across all 5 nations. But the operational records, I've been going through, reference at least 63 distinct facility codes. That's 16 facilities that were never found, never decommissioned, never catalogued. Kakashi pushed off the doorframe. And Naruto had access to these records. Naruto sat in on the intelligence briefing where the root facility list was discussed. The briefing materials included the discrepancy between known facilities and referenced codes. It was flagged as a low-priority intelligence gap because, during wartime, 16 abandoned Danzo hideouts weren't anyone's top concern. But Dark Naruto noticed. Dark Naruto notices everything Naruto didn't pay attention to. That's his whole deal. Shikamaru pulled a sheet from the table. A hand-drawn chart cross-referencing facility codes with geographic indicators embedded in the code structure. Root used a systematic naming convention for facilities. The first 2 characters indicate the nation, the third indicates the terrain type, coastal, inland, subterranean, and the 4th through 6th indicate the specific region within that nation. It's basic but consistent. He pointed to 4 codes he'd circled in red. These 4 unaccounted facilities are coded for coastal, subterranean locations in the Land of Lightning's maritime territory. Coastal and subterranean means underground installations accessible from the sea, islands, sea caves, underwater tunnel systems. He's using a root facility. I think so. It fits everything we know. Underground location explains why Hinata can't detect his chakra from the surface, rock, and earth-dampened signatures. Coastal access means he could arrive by boat. Pre-existing infrastructure means he had shelter, storage, possibly even sealed supplies waiting for him. Shikamaru stepped back from the map. The problem is I can't pinpoint which one. The geographic indicators narrow it to a region, but the Land of Lightning's maritime territory covers thousands of square kilometers. I need more data. What kind of data? I need the original root operational files. Not the declassified summaries, the originals. Danzo's personal records, facility blueprints, logistics manifests. If they exist, they'd have exact coordinates. Those would be in Konoha's classified archives. Getting access during wartime, I know, it'll take time. Shikamaru's frustration was visible, a tightening around his eyes, a sharpness in his voice that replaced the usual drawl. And time is exactly what we don't have. Sakura's deterioration timeline gives us maybe 2 weeks before he starts losing cognitive function. After that, we're not negotiating with a rational person. We're fighting a cornered animal with half the Ninetales' power. Kakashi absorbed this. The intelligence angle was their best lead, the only lead, but it was painfully slow. They needed someone who could access classified root files without going through the official request chain, which would take days they couldn't spare. There might be a faster way, Kakashi said slowly. Shikamaru looked at him. Sai was root. He served directly under Danzo. If anyone outside the classified archives knows the locations of off-grid facilities, it's a former operative. Where is Sai now? Assigned to the 3rd Division under Kakashi. Kakashi paused at the absurdity of referencing himself in 3rd person, then pushed past it. Under the command structure, he should be at the 3rd Division staging area about 80 kilometers north. Get him here. Shikamaru turned back to his maps. And Kakashi, we should also consider that Dark Naruto wants us to figure this out. Eventually. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Why would he want that? Because his endgame isn't hiding forever. If all he wanted was to disappear with Tsunade, he could have gone anywhere in the world. He's got the skills and the power to vanish completely. Instead, he chose a location within the Land of Lightning's territory, within the Allied forces' operational area. He used root infrastructure, which he had to know we'd eventually trace. And he left Shikaku alive and conscious, which means he left the one person most capable of reconstructing his plan in a position to do exactly that. You think he wants to be found? I think he wants to be found on his terms, after he's had his conversation with Tsunade. After he's made his point. Shikamaru's eyes were sharp. This isn't a kidnapping, Kakashi. It's a negotiation, and we're not the primary audience. Tsunade is. He'll let us find them when he's ready, when he's gotten what he wants from her. And if he doesn't get what he wants. Shikamaru didn't answer that. He didn't need to. They both knew what a desperate, dying, increasingly unstable version of Naruto with nothing to lose might do. Get me Sai, Shikamaru said again. I'll have a refined search area by the time he arrives. Kakashi left to send the message. As he walked through the base, he passed Sakura's medical station and glanced in. She was bent over a workbench, surrounded by reference scrolls and chakra analysis equipment, working on something with the intense focus she brought to everything she cared about. How's the deterioration model coming? He asked from the doorway. Terrifying, she said without looking up. I've been modeling the chakra network decay based on what we know about split consciousness entities. It's not just a linear degradation, it's cascading. Once the first system fails, it puts additional stress on adjacent systems, which accelerates their failure, which increases the stress on the next system. She finally looked up. Her eyes were bloodshot. He's a body running on half the infrastructure it needs. Everything's working overtime to compensate, and everything will burn out faster because of it. First visible symptoms: physical tremors, fine motor degradation, his handwriting will get worse, his seal work will get sloppier. Then temperature instability, chills, fever spikes. After that, it hits the brain. Memory gaps, emotional swings, paranoia. The paranoia is the worst part because it feeds on itself. He'll start seeing threats that aren't there, which will make him more stressed, which accelerates the degradation, which makes the paranoia worse. Can it be reversed? Only one way I can see. Reintegration with Naruto. The two halves come back together, the chakra network restabilizes, the damage heals. But it has to happen before the degradation passes a certain threshold. After that, she snapped a pencil she'd been holding without seeming to notice. After that, there might not be enough left of him to reintegrate. And Naruto, the light half. Same problem, different manifestation. He's too passive, too gentle, it's hard to describe. It's like talking to Naruto with the volume turned down. All the kindness is there, all the empathy, but the drive is gone, the fire. Without his dark half, he's just, she searched for the word. Nice, and nice isn't enough to save anyone. Kakashi nodded slowly. B's bringing him in, should be here by tonight. I'll be ready. She turned back to her work, then paused. Kakashi-sensei, when we find them, Tsunade Shishu and Dark Naruto, is there a plan, an actual plan for how to resolve this that doesn't end in a fight? That's what I'm working on. Work faster. She didn't say it harshly. She said it the way she said everything these days, with the clinical directness of someone who'd seen too many patients die from hesitation. Kakashi walked on. In the cavern, the negotiation began in earnest. Dark Naruto sat against his wall. Tsunade sat against hers. The scroll lay between them on the sandy floor, unrolled to the first section. The lantern had been refilled, and the light was steady. Outside, above them, the ocean was calm after the storm. She could hear it faintly through the shaft, a distant and constant breathing. Section 1, Tsunade said. Jinchuriki rights and protections. Your first proposal is a legal framework declaring Biju hosts as protected persons under Fire Country law, with specific prohibitions against social discrimination, economic exclusion, and the denial of public services. That's right. The intent is sound. The implementation is going to hit a wall. Tell me where. She leaned forward. Whatever else this was, captivity, coercion, a kidnapping dressed up as policy dialogue, she was engaging now, not because she'd been forced to. Because the proposals deserved engagement, and because 20-plus years of political leadership had given her a finely tuned sense for the gap between what was right and what was possible. You're proposing criminal penalties for discrimination against Jinchuriki. Fines, imprisonment, loss of shinobi rank. That's aggressive, and it'll be perceived as punitive by the civilian population. You'll get resistance, not just political resistance, but social resistance. People who fear Biju won't stop fearing them because you threaten punishment. They'll just hide the fear, and hidden fear is harder to address than open fear. So, what do you propose? A parallel track. Criminal penalties for the worst abuses, physical violence, denial of essential services, institutional exclusion. Those are clear lines that can be enforced. But for social discrimination, the stares, the whispers, the shopkeepers who won't serve you, you need cultural change, not legal change. Education programs, exposure, humanizing the Jinchuriki in the public narrative. Education programs. His tone was flat. You're telling me to solve systematic dehumanization with a pamphlet. I'm telling you that you can't legislate hearts. You can legislate behavior. You can make it illegal to deny someone housing based on their Jinchuriki status. But you can't make it illegal to be afraid, and trying to will create a backlash that undermines the reforms that can work. He was quiet for a moment. She could see him processing, the same way Naruto processed, chewing on an idea, turning it over, but without the restless physical energy. Dark Naruto thought in stillness. Fine, he said. I'll accept a two-tier approach. Legal penalties for quantifiable discrimination, cultural programs for the rest. But the cultural programs need teeth. Mandatory inclusion in academy curriculum, funded community integration initiatives, public statements from village leadership. Not optional, not when we get around to it, built into the budget with dedicated oversight. That's feasible. I'd push back on mandatory academy curriculum. The academy is already overscheduled, and adding another mandatory module will mean cutting something else. But I can get it into the existing ethics and history tracks as supplementary content with examination weight. Examination weight means teachers can't skip it. Exactly. Another pause. He reached for the scroll and made a note in the margin, quick, precise, the handwriting that was Naruto's but controlled. Next point, the Guardian Mandate. This is the one I have the most issues with. Tsunade shifted her position. The stone floor was murder on her lower back. You're proposing that every Jinchuriki must be assigned a permanent guardian, not an Anbu handler, not a military supervisor, but a dedicated caretaker with parental authority and no conflicting military obligations. The guardian must be vetted by an independent review board, must meet specific psychological and emotional fitness criteria, and cannot be reassigned or removed without the review board's approval. That's right. It's a beautiful idea. It's also nearly impossible to implement in the current political structure. Jinchuriki are classified as military assets. Their care falls under the cage's direct authority. Creating an independent review board with the power to override the cage on Jinchuriki placement is necessary. A fundamental restructuring of the chain of command that every cage in the alliance will resist, because it sets a precedent for civilian oversight of military decisions. Good. That precedent should exist. Tsunade exhaled through her nose. You're not wrong. But being right doesn't make it achievable. The rakeage alone would. The rakeage kept Killer Bee on a leash for years. Used him as a weapon, tried to restrict his movements, nearly drove him to fake his own death to get some freedom. Is a decent man and a terrible guardian, and his treatment of Bee is exactly why this mandate is necessary. Dark Naruto's voice tightened. The current system trusts Cage to do the right thing. Every Cage in history has failed that trust. Every single one. The third Hokage failed Naruto. The fourth Raikage failed Bee. The fourth Mizukage was literally mind-controlled through his Biju. The system doesn't work. It needs structural change, not better people. And if I agree with you, which, for the record, I do, the question remains, how do you get 5 Cage to voluntarily limit their own authority? You don't ask them to volunteer. You make it a condition of the alliance. Tsunade stared at him. You want me to hold the Allied forces' cooperation hostage to domestic policy reform. I want you to use the leverage you have right now, the fact that 5 villages need each other to survive this war, to push through changes that would never pass in peacetime. Wars end. Alliances dissolve. But laws written during wartime, when everyone's scared and cooperative, those last. She sat back. The political calculation was cynical, ruthless, and exactly the kind of thinking that built lasting institutions. It was also the kind of thinking that Naruto, the real, whole Naruto, would never have engaged in because Naruto believed in people's goodness and would have tried to convince the cage through sheer force of sincerity. This was different. This was governance as leverage, as strategy, as a chess game played with laws instead of armies. And it was, she had to admit, far more likely to produce lasting results than Naruto's earnest appeals. "You're scaring me a little," she said. "Good, I should scare you a little. If I don't, you'll default to what's comfortable." They worked through the next 3 sections over the course of 4 hours. Each one followed the same pattern. He proposed, she challenged. He defended, she counter-proposed. They argued, sometimes heatedly, sometimes almost collegially, and eventually landed on something that neither of them was entirely happy with, which meant it was probably fair. The orphan welfare provisions were less contentious. Tsunade had been trying to reform Konoha's orphan care system since she'd taken office and had been blocked by the council at every turn. Dark Naruto's proposals were more aggressive than what she'd attempted, but the core framework aligned with her own unrealized intentions, and she found herself building on his ideas rather than tearing them down. The mental health provisions surprised her. He'd proposed mandatory psychological evaluation for all active shinobi, with particular emphasis on child soldiers, academy graduates under 16, and jinchuriki. The evaluations would be conducted by an independent medical corps, not the village's military-affiliated health services, to prevent conflicts of interest. "This is personal," she said, reading the section. "Everything on that scroll is personal. I mean specifically. You're not just talking about Naruto. You're talking about every child the academy graduates into a life of violence without checking if they're psychologically equipped for it. The Uchiha incident, Kakashi's breakdown after his teammate's death, Gaara's childhood, Sasuke, don't say that name." The temperature in the cavern dropped. Not literally, the air was the same, but something in Dark Naruto's voice shifted, a vibration of something deeper and more dangerous than anything he'd shown her so far. "Why not?" she asked carefully. "Because Sasuke Uchiha is the proof that everything I'm saying is right. A traumatized child from a massacred clan, left to fester in his own rage, used as a motivation tool for Naruto. You have to get stronger to bring Sasuke back, without anyone ever stopping to ask whether what happened to Sasuke was a systemic failure that the village caused. The Uchiha massacre was sanctioned by village leadership. Konoha's government created Sasuke's destruction and then asked a 13-year-old Jinchuriki to fix it." His hands gripped his knees. The tremor was back, fine, subtle, but there. "Don't say his name because I can't think about him without feeling things that would compromise this conversation." Tsunade filed the tremor away. Second time she'd noticed it, getting worse. "All right," she said. "We'll table that for now, but the mental health provisions, I can support these. In principle and in practice. The independent medical corps is the hard sell because it means creating a new institution with its own budget and authority, and it's the only way to ensure honest evaluation. A shinobi who knows their psychologist reports to the Hokage will never be honest about their mental state. You know that." She did know that. She'd seen it 100 times. Shinobi who hid injuries, hid trauma, hid suicidal ideation because admitting weakness to a military hierarchy meant career death or worse. The system was designed to produce tools, not treat people. "I know that," she said. They kept going. Section by section, proposal by proposal. Tsunade pushed back where the proposals were impractical, acknowledged where they were right, and found herself repeatedly surprised by the depth of thought behind them. This wasn't a manifesto. It was a governance framework, detailed, pragmatic, designed for implementation rather than ideology. By the 5th hour, something had shifted between them. Not trust, they were a long way from trust, but something adjacent. A recognition of shared purpose, maybe. Or just the particular bond that forms between two people who have been arguing honestly for hours and have started to respect each other's intelligence. Dark Naruto leaned back and closed his eyes. That's enough for today. My head's killing me. Headaches? Since this morning. Nothing debilitating. Let me see your hands. He opened his eyes, looked at her for a long moment, then extended his hands, palms up. She took them without hesitation, a medic's reflex, overriding the strangeness of the situation. His skin was warm, slightly clammy. She couldn't use diagnostic jutsu with the suppression seal active, but she didn't need jutsu for a basic physical assessment. Her fingers found his pulse, elevated, irregular. The tremor was more pronounced up close. And his skin temperature was uneven. His right hand was warmer than his left by at least 2 degrees, indicating circulatory instability. You're deteriorating, she said. I know. How long have you known? Since the separation. I could feel it starting immediately, a wrongness in how the body operates. Like driving a cart with half the wheels missing. It moves, but it's not smooth. The headaches will get worse, so will the tremors, and your temperature regulation is already compromised. I can feel it in your hands. She released them and sat back. How long do you think you have? Before what? Before I can't function? Before I lose cognitive coherence? Before I die? He said the last word without emphasis. I've estimated 3 to 4 weeks for total systemic failure. Functional impairment will start sooner. Maybe 10 days. You're working on a deadline and you didn't think to mention this? I mentioned it by bringing you here. Every hour we spend on these proposals is an hour against my clock. I don't have time to waste, Tsunade, neither do you. She stared at him. The boy, and he was a boy, 16 years old regardless of the ancient pain in his eyes, was dying. He knew he was dying. And instead of raging or weeping or trying to find a way to survive, he was spending his remaining time negotiating policy reforms for children he'd never meet. It was the most Naruto thing she'd ever seen, and the most un-Naruto, because Naruto would have refused to accept death as an outcome. Naruto would have fought it with every breath, would have shouted at the universe until it changed its mind. Dark Naruto had accepted it with a calm that was either enlightened or devastating, and she couldn't tell which. There's another option, she said. Reintegration, if you and Naruto merge. I don't want to talk about that. Tough. You're a medic's captive now, and medics don't let patients refuse treatment because they're stubborn. She leaned forward. Reintegration would stabilize your chakra network and reverse the degradation. It's the only viable treatment. Everything else is palliative. And reintegration means ceasing to exist as an independent being. Going back inside. Being buried again. Not necessarily. If the reintegration is done properly, with both halves consciously cooperating, the result wouldn't be Naruto suppressing you. It would be a unified whole that includes everything you are, your awareness, your perspective, your intelligence, integrated, not imprisoned. You don't know that. You're right, I don't. Nobody's ever done this before. But I know enough about chakra network integration from my medical research to know that forced suppression and conscious integration produce fundamentally different outcomes. One is a cage, the other is, she searched for the word, synthesis. He was quiet for a long time. The lantern flickered. Somewhere above, a seabird cried. Even if I believed that, he said finally, it requires Naruto to find me, and I've made sure that's not easy. Your search team is led by Shikamaru Nara and Kakashi Hatake. They'll find you. Eventually. I'm counting on eventually. I need time first. Time to finish the proposals. Time to finish the proposals. Time to make sure you're committed, not convinced by emotion, not agreeing to make the hostage situation end, but genuinely committed to structural reform. Because after reintegration, if it happens, I won't have a separate voice anymore. Everything I care about will be filtered through Naruto's optimism and his willingness to forgive and move on. And moving on is what got us here. Tsunade sat with that. The weight of it. A dying boy, working against his own clock, trying to build something permanent before the candle burned out. Not for himself, for the next child. For the next Jinchuriki, the next orphan, the next weapon child. I'm committed, she said, words. Then test me, give me the next section. We'll work until you need to rest, and we'll pick it up again tomorrow, and we'll keep going until every proposal is either refined into implementable policy or replaced with something better. And when we're done, I'll sign it, not as your hostage, as the hawkage. He searched her face. Looking for the lie, the manipulation, the political calculation. She let him look. She had nothing to hide, not anymore, not after the past day had stripped away every comfortable delusion she'd held about her own leadership. Tomorrow, he said. Tonight, I need to check the perimeter seals and do maintenance on the barrier, and you should sleep. One more thing. What? The files you mentioned on the boat, the ones about Naruto's childhood, council minutes, Anbu surveillance logs, mission reports. You said you stole them. His expression shifted, a flicker of something sharp and guarded. I did. Where are they? He stood, crossed to the supply stack, and pulled out a sealed storage scroll. He unsealed it with a touch, and what emerged was a stack of documents nearly 1/2 meter high, folders, bound reports, loose pages, all bearing the official stamps and classification markings of Konoha's administrative archive. He set them on the floor between them. Naruto accessed these during his last week in Konoha before the island turtle deployment. 3 separate visits to the archive, using his clearance to access files related to Jinchuriki security protocols. The archivists didn't question it. He was a registered shinobi on active duty with legitimate need to know. Tsunade looked at the stack. She recognized some of the folder types, council session records, Anbu operational reports, social services documentation. The paper trail of a village's interaction with its Jinchuriki stretching back 16 years. He didn't raid them, Dark Naruto said. Naruto went in, pulled the files, and brought them back to his apartment. He intended to read them, but he kept finding reasons not to. Training, missions. Ramen with friends. The files sat in a storage seal in his closet for 3 days, and then he was shipped to the island turtle. He paused. I read them, every page, in the mindscape while he slept. And they're exactly what you'd expect. 16 years of documentation, proving that Konoha's government was aware, in detail, in writing, on the record, of every failure in Naruto Uzumaki's care. Every incident of abuse that was reported and dismissed. Every social services recommendation that was overruled by the council. Every Anbu surveillance report that noted signs of neglect and was filed without action. His voice was even, controlled, but the tremor in his hands was worse. It's all there, Tsunade, in the village's own handwriting. She reached for the stack. Her fingers touched the top folder, Anbu Personnel Division, stamped with the date of Naruto's 5th birthday, and she felt something cold settle in her chest. I need to read these, she said. I know. Not tonight, tomorrow, after the proposals. Your call. He turned toward the shaft. But I want you to understand something. Those files aren't evidence of individual cruelty. The people in those reports, the social workers, the Anbu operatives, the council members, most of them weren't monsters. They were functionaries. They followed procedure. They did what the system told them to do, and the system told them that the Jinchuriki's well-being was secondary to the Jinchuriki's containment. He started climbing. That's what makes it unforgivable. Not that one person failed Naruto. That the entire system was designed to fail him, and everyone who operated within it just did their jobs. He disappeared up the shaft. The barrier hummed closed. Tsunade sat alone with the stack of files and the scroll and the lantern, and for the 2nd night in a row, she didn't sleep. She read. She read council minutes from sessions she'd never attended, Anbu reports from operatives whose names she didn't recognize, social services evaluations written in the dry, clinical language of bureaucratic indifference. She read a report from a social worker who'd visited 6-year-old Naruto's apartment and found spoiled food in the refrigerator, no clean clothes, and a child who didn't know how to use the stove because no one had taught him. The social worker's recommendation: assign a caretaker or place in foster system. The council's response, noted in the margin by an administrative hand: reviewed and declined. Jinchuriki containment protocols supersede standard welfare procedures. She read an Anbu surveillance log from a week in October, Naruto's birthday month, the anniversary of the Ninetales attack, describing how the operative on watch had observed multiple incidents of verbal abuse directed at the 7-year-old subject by civilian adults, including a shopkeeper who chased him out of a grocery store with a broom. The operative's note: subject displayed resilience and returned to his residence without incident. No containment concerns. No mention of the child's well-being. No follow-up action. Just no containment concerns. As if that was the only metric that mattered. It was. She read a council session transcript where the topic of the Jinchuriki's education was discussed. 3 council members argued for placing Naruto in a specialized program outside the standard academy, essentially isolating him from other children. The third Hokage overruled them, insisting that Naruto attend the regular academy. His stated reason: integration will promote emotional stability and reduce containment risk. Even Hiruzen, even the man who cared, framed it in terms of containment. She kept reading. Report after report, year after year. A mosaic of institutional neglect rendered in official stamps and bureaucratic language. Each page a tiny wound that together formed a picture of systematic cruelty, so normalized that the people perpetrating it didn't even recognize it as cruelty. The worst document was near the bottom of the stack. A single page, dated 3 months after the Ninetales attack, bearing the joint seal of the Konoha Council and the Hokage's office. It was a policy directive, classified at the highest level, establishing the Jinchuriki management framework, the official protocol for Naruto's care. The framework was 12 bullet points long. 9 of them related to security, monitoring, surveillance, containment measures, emergency response protocols in case of Biju chakra manifestation. 2 related to education and training, ensuring the Jinchuriki developed sufficient skills to be operationally useful. One single point out of 12 addressed the Jinchuriki's personal welfare, and it read: ensure adequate provision of housing, nutrition, and medical care to maintain the host's physical viability. Physical viability, not happiness, not health, not childhood, viability, the minimum necessary to keep the container functional. Tsunade set the document down. Her hands were shaking, not from the suppression seal, not from fatigue, from rage. Pure, undiluted rage of the kind she hadn't felt since the day Dan died, and she'd sworn she'd never let anyone she loved be sacrificed to the machine again. She'd broken that oath. Not through action, but through absence. She'd stayed away while the machine ground up another child, and when she finally came back, she'd been so grateful for Naruto's sunshine that she'd never looked at the shadows it was hiding. Dark Naruto's voice echoed in her memory: I want you to sit with it. She sat with it. All night, in the dark, in a cavern beneath an unnamed island, the 5th Hokage sat with the full weight of her village's sins and let them crush her the way they should have crushed her years ago. The sun was barely up when Sakura heard the commotion at the base's east gate. She'd been in the medical station, trying to catch 20 minutes of sleep between analysis sessions, when the shouts started. She was on her feet and moving before her brain fully registered what was happening. Medic's reflex, same as Tsunade's, the body responding to crisis before the mind could object. She pushed through the gathering crowd at the gate and stopped. Killer Bee stood at the entrance, and he was carrying Naruto, not supporting, not assisting, carrying. Naruto was draped over Bee's back like a rag doll, arms hanging limp, head lolling. He was conscious, his eyes were open, blue and dull, blinking slowly, but he clearly couldn't support his own weight. He looked wrong. Sakura had known Naruto since they were 12. She knew his energy, his presence, the way he filled a room just by walking into it. The boy on B's back didn't feel anything. He looked deflated, not thinner, not injured, just less like someone had turned down his brightness. "I need a medical team and a bed," B said. His voice was hoarse, and he was favoring his left side. The arm that Dark Naruto had dislocated was in a rough splint. "He's stable, but he can't mold chakra worth a damn, and his network's a mess. Half his tenketsu are showing irregular flow patterns." Sakura was already moving, directing a stretcher team forward, her hands glowing green with diagnostic chakra before she'd consciously decided to activate it. "How long has he been like this?" "Since the separation." "Almost 2 days now. He's got good moments and bad ones. Right now's a bad one." He walked most of the way here under his own power, but the last 10 clicks, he just folded. They got Naruto onto the stretcher and into the medical station. Sakura's hands moved over him with the precise, practiced motion of 1,000 examinations, and the diagnostic feedback made her stomach sink. His chakra network was a disaster. Not damaged, halved. It was like looking at a road system where every other road had been removed. The primary pathways were intact but operating at reduced capacity, and the connections between them were frayed and thin. The Nine-Tails seal was still in place, still functional, but the chakra it contained was muted, a fraction of what it should be. "Naruto," she said softly, leaning close. "Can you hear me? Hey, Sakura." His voice was a whisper, and his smile, God, his smile was wrong. Too gentle, too quiet, like Naruto was smiling through cotton. "Sorry, I'm kinda messed up. You're going to be fine. I'm going to run a full diagnostic, and we'll figure out a treatment plan, okay?" "Okay." He closed his eyes, then opened them again. "Sakura, he took Granny Tsunade. I know. He's not evil, he's angry. He's so angry, Sakura, and it's all the anger I never let myself feel, and his voice cracked. "It's a lot, it's so much. I know." She put her hand on his forehead. Warm, steady. The touch of a healer who'd held dying people together with nothing but chakra and willpower. "We're going to find them. We're going to fix this. But right now, I need you to rest and let me work." He nodded. His eyes closed again, and this time they stayed closed. Within moments, his breathing evened out into sleep. Not chakra-assisted, not jutsu-induced, just the sleep of a body that had nothing left to give. Sakura worked for 2 hours straight. She mapped his entire chakra network, noting every irregularity, every deficit, every point where the flow stuttered or thinned. She cross-referenced the results with her deterioration model and felt a grim satisfaction that her predictions were accurate, and a grim horror, because accuracy meant the timeline was real. When she was done, she stepped outside the medical station and found Kakashi waiting. "Give it to me straight," he said. His chakra network is functioning at roughly 45% capacity. The Nine-Tails chakra is accessible but suppressed, like a fire with a wet blanket over it. He can mold basic jutsu with significant effort, but anything requiring large chakra output is beyond him. Shadow clones, maybe 2 or 3, Rasengan possible but exhausting, Sage mode, she shook her head. Not a chance. The nature-energy integration requires a stable network, and his is anything but. Can he fight against a genin? Probably against his dark half. She looked at Kakashi flatly. No, not even close. Dark Naruto has the other half of his reserves plus the combat instincts and strategic mind. In a straight fight, Naruto loses, badly. Then we don't let it come to a straight fight, and how do we manage that? Kakashi didn't have an answer. He stood in the morning light with his hands in his pockets and his mask hiding whatever expression he was wearing, and for a moment he looked exactly like what he was, a man carrying too many failures, watching another one unfold. There's something else, Sakura said. While I was examining Naruto, I noticed something odd in his network. The connections between his halved pathways, the places where the dark half separated, they're not just severed. They're reaching. The tenketsu are extending tendrils of chakra toward the missing connections, like roots searching for water. His body is actively trying to reconnect with his other half. Meaning the separation isn't natural and his system knows it. It's fighting to restore itself. If Dark Naruto is experiencing the same thing, and he almost certainly is, then his body is also reaching toward Naruto. They're pulled toward each other, not emotionally, physically, like two halves of a magnet. Can we use that? Sakura tilted her head. Theoretically. If we got them within a certain range of each other, the pull might be detectable. Like a compass, Naruto might be able to sense which direction his other half is in. What range? I don't know. The pull is subtle. I only noticed it with a deep diagnostic scan. From a distance, he might not consciously feel it at all, but if we can get him close, she trailed off. It's a theory, untested, but it's something. Right now, something is better than nothing. Kakashi straightened. Keep working on him, get him as stable as you can. I have a feeling we're going to need him mobile soon. How soon? Shikamaru's closing in on a location, and Sai is on his way. Kakashi turned to leave, then stopped. Sakura, you're doing good work. Tsunade would be proud. Sakura's jaw tightened. She didn't say anything. She went back into the medical station, back to her patient, back to the slow and painstaking work of putting Naruto back together well enough to face the part of himself he'd spent a lifetime running from. The day wore on. The war continued. And somewhere on an unnamed island, surrounded by empty ocean, a boy made of anger read through his own reform proposals and ignored the trembling in his hands. And a woman who had been hawkish for years read the documents that proved she'd never been hawkish enough. The cage had 2 doors, one for the captive and one for the captor. And both of them were beginning to realize that neither door led anywhere good unless they walked through together. Chapter 4. What the village built the morning of the 4th day broke gray and windless over the island. Tsunade hadn't slept. She'd tried, her body demanded it, every joint aching, her eyes gritty with exhaustion, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw the documents. The council minutes. The surveillance logs. The 12-point framework that reduced a child to a container. She'd organized the files into chronological order during the night, spreading them across the cavern floor in a timeline that stretched from the day of Naruto's birth to the day he graduated from the academy. 12 years of institutional neglect, laid out in neat rows of paper, each one stamped and signed and filed by people who went home afterward and ate dinner with their families and slept soundly. Dark Naruto descended the shaft at dawn. He stopped halfway down the wall, looking at the papers arranged across the floor, and something moved across his face. Not surprise, because he'd read them all before, but something rawer. Seeing them laid out like this, in physical space, given weight and dimension, was different from reading them in a mindscape. You organized them, he said, by date. It's worse in order. He climbed the rest of the way down and stepped carefully between the rows. His eyes moved across the documents with the familiarity of someone revisiting a wound. The tremor in his hands was more visible this morning. Tsunade could see it even from across the cavern. How are you feeling? She asked. We're not doing that. We are doing that. I'm a doctor, and you're deteriorating in front of me. The headache's worse, he said nothing for a moment. Then, worse, and there's a new thing. My right hand goes numb sometimes, comes and goes, lasts a few seconds. Peripheral neuropathy. The chakra network decay was hitting his extremities first, exactly what Sakura's model would predict, though Tsunade didn't know that. She filed it alongside the tremors, the temperature instability, the headaches. The cascade was accelerating. Sit down, she said. I want to check your pulse. After we work. Before we work. Because if your circulatory system is compromised, your cognitive function won't be far behind, and I refuse to negotiate policy with someone who can't think straight. The ghost of a smile. That painful, Naruto-shaped flicker. He sat down against his wall and extended his hands. She crossed the room and took his wrists. His pulse was worse than yesterday, more irregular, with occasional skipped beats that made her breath catch. His skin temperature differential had increased. And there was something new. A faint, almost imperceptible vibration in his chakra network that she could feel through skin contact even without diagnostic jutsu. Not his own chakra, something external. A pull. She'd felt something similar in patients whose chakra networks had been partially severed by injury. The intact portions would reach toward the severed portions, generating a low-level resonance, the body trying to heal itself. Dark Naruto's network was reaching toward something far away. Toward his other half. "You can feel it, can't you?" she said. "The pull." His eyes narrowed. "What pull?" "Your network is trying to reconnect with Naruto. There's a resonance, like a compass needle trying to find north. You might not consciously feel it, but your body does." He pulled his hands back. "It doesn't matter." "It matters because it means the separation is unstable at a fundamental level. Your body knows it's incomplete. It's trying to fix itself, and the longer you resist that process, the faster you'll deteriorate." "I said it doesn't matter." His voice had an edge now, the first real edge she'd heard since the negotiation began. "I have enough time to finish what I started. That's all that matters. And after? After isn't my concern. It's mine." She sat back on her heels and looked at him, really looked, not as a captive assessing a captor, but as a woman who'd lost too many people looking at a boy who was choosing to die. "You're 16 years old. You have Naruto's face, Naruto's voice, Naruto's heart, even if you'd never admit it. And you're sitting here calmly planning your own death like it's a line item in a budget. I'm planning to ensure that what happened to me never happens to anyone else. If that costs my life, it costs my life." Naruto would understand. He's always been willing to die for what he believes in. Naruto is willing to die fighting, not willing to die fading. There's a difference. Is there, or is that just the version of sacrifice you find acceptable? He stood, ending the examination with the movement. "Dying in battle is heroic. Dying quietly for a cause is just sad. Is that it? You'd rather I went out in a blaze of glory so everyone could cry about how brave I was. I'd rather you didn't go out at all." The words hung between them. Tsunade heard herself say them and felt the truth of them settle into her bones. She meant it. Not as strategy, not as a medic's professional obligation, but as something simpler and harder. She didn't want this boy to die. Dark Naruto stared at her. For a long moment, the mask held, the stone-faced, controlled, calculating mask he wore like armor. Then it cracked. Not much. A hairline fracture around the eyes, a slight loosening of the jaw. He turned away before she could see more. "The proposals," he said. "Section 6, institutional oversight." She let him redirect. But she didn't let go of what she'd seen in that crack. Something young, something frightened, something that wanted very badly to live and didn't know how to say so. They sat on opposite sides of the cavern and opened the scroll. The papers between them, the documented history of Naruto's suffering, lay in there neat, rose like a battlefield map of a war that had already been lost. "Section 6, he said. "Independent Oversight Commission for Shinobi Welfare. I'm proposing a permanent body with investigative authority, subpoena power, and the ability to issue binding directives to village leadership on matters of," I read it. 3 times. Tsunade pulled the scroll toward her and pointed to a specific passage. "Your proposed commission structure has 7 members, 2 appointed by the Hokage, 2 elected by the Shinobi Corps, 2 civilian representatives, and 1 independent chair selected by unanimous agreement. That's a sound balance. But your funding mechanism is the problem." "How so?" "You're proposing a dedicated tax levy, 2% of the village's military budget, permanently allocated. In peacetime, that's manageable. During war, when military spending spikes, 2% becomes an enormous amount of money. The council will argue that diverting military funds during active conflict endangers lives. The council will argue that diverting military funds endangers lives under any circumstances. That's their default position on any spending that doesn't produce weapons or soldiers. If you let that argument win, the commission never gets funded. I'm not letting it win. I'm telling you to anticipate it and build a counter-argument into the proposal. Tie the funding to peacetime budget baselines, not active spending. Cap the allocation during declared conflicts with a guaranteed restoration clause when hostilities end. Give the Hawks their wartime exception and then close the door behind them." He was taking notes. His handwriting was slightly less precise than before, the tremor showing in the characters, but the speed of his thinking hadn't diminished. He processed her suggestion, adapted the proposal, and looked up. "That's good," he said. "I didn't think of the baseline anchor." "That's what 20 years of fighting budget committees gets you." She leaned forward. "Now, the investigative authority. You want the commission to have the power to compel testimony from active shinobi, including Anbu and special operations personnel. That's going to be the biggest fight in the entire document. Because it threatens the secrecy that lets abuse happen. Because it threatens the secrecy that also protects operational security. You can't give a civilian oversight body access to classified mission details without creating a massive intelligence vulnerability. One compromised commission member, one leaked document, and active operatives die. Then build firewalls, classification tiers within the commission's access. Cleared members for sensitive material, general members for standard oversight. It's not unprecedented. The Fire Daimyo's court has similar structures for military review. They went back and forth for an hour. The conversation was sharp, focused, and remarkably productive. Tsunade found herself leaning into it with an engagement she hadn't felt since her early days as Hawkage, when she'd believed she could actually change things before the inertia of the institution ground her down. That inertia was real. She'd felt it every day, the weight of tradition, of precedent, of "we've always done it this way." The council members who nodded politely at her reform proposals and then quietly killed them in committee. The clan heads who supported progress in principle and opposed it in practice. The deep, structural resistance of a system that had been optimized for war production for generations and saw any deviation as weakness. Dark Naruto's proposals didn't ignore that resistance. They were designed to overcome it, to create structures with enough independent authority that the inertia of the old system couldn't smother them. It was aggressive, ambitious, and in many places idealistic. But the idealism was tempered by a pragmatism that surprised her. "You've been studying governance theory," she said during a pause. Naruto had access to the Konoha library. Most people don't think of it as a resource because it's full of dusty scrolls about farming techniques and clan histories. But there's an entire section on political philosophy and administrative theory that nobody reads because it's not about jutsu. He shrugged. "I read it, all of it, while Naruto slept. 5 months of nocturnal reading. I didn't need sleep. I'm a psychic construct, or I was before the separation. Sleep is for bodies, and I didn't have one." She tried to imagine it. 5 months of consciousness without rest, without distraction, without any physical sensation at all. Just a mind in a dark space, reading, thinking, planning. The loneliness of it was staggering. "That sounds terrible," she said before she could stop herself. He looked at her. The mask was in place, but something shifted behind it, a recognition that she'd seen past the armor to the wound underneath. "It was," he said quietly. "It was the loneliest thing I've ever experienced. And I'm a version of Naruto Uzumaki, so that's saying something." The words landed softly, without accusation. That made them hit harder. Tsunade picked up the next document from the floor, not the scroll, but one of the files. An Anbu surveillance report from Naruto's 8th year. She held it up. "I want to go through these with you," she said. "Not just read them, discuss them, document by document." "Why?" "Because reading them alone, I see data. I see failure, I see neglect, but I see it as a pattern. I need to see it as a story. Your story. And you're the only person who can tell me what these reports meant to the child who lived through them." Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "You want me to narrate my own trauma for your benefit. I want you to narrate it for the record. Because when I go back, when I implement these reforms, I'm going to stand in front of the council and tell them why. And I need to tell it like a story, not a policy briefing. I need them to feel it the way you feel it, the way I'm starting to feel it." He was very still. The lantern light caught the fine tremor in his hands, the slight unevenness in his breathing. She was asking him to open a door he'd built his entire existence around keeping closed, the door between intellectual rage and lived pain. "That's not a small ask," he said. I know. It might break something. I know that too. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, the white irises were brighter than she'd seen them, not with power, but with something that might have been unshed tears catching the light. All right, he said. Pick a file. She chose the Anbu report from the 8th year. It was clinical, detached, written by an operative designated Hawk 7. Standard surveillance notation, times, locations, subject activities, threat assessments, 0600, subject wakes. Prepares breakfast, instant ramen, water, eats alone. 0645, subject departs residence for academy. Route, standard, no deviation, no contact with other persons en route, 0830, subject arrives at academy, takes seat in rear of classroom, no interaction with classmates during first period. That last line, Tsunade said, no interaction with classmates. Dark Naruto's voice was steady, but his eyes were fixed on a point somewhere past the wall. The other kids didn't talk to us. Their parents had told them to stay away. Some of them were afraid. They didn't know what we were, but they knew we were something their parents feared. Others were just following instructions. The ones who were cruel about it, they'd learned cruelty from their families, and we were a safe target. The report doesn't mention any of that. The report wasn't interested in that. The report was interested in whether the Jinchuriki was a threat. We weren't. We were an 8-year-old sitting alone at the back of a classroom drawing pictures of faces because we couldn't remember what our parents looked like, and nobody would tell us. Tsunade turned the page. More surveillance notation. More clinical distances. 1200. Subject eats lunch alone on academy grounds outdoor bench, east side. Approaches by classmate, female, Hyuga clan, observed but no sustained interaction. Subject displays elevated emotional effect, agitation consistent with social frustration. No containment concerns. Hinata. Tsunade said softly. She tried. Even then, she tried. She'd come close and we'd see her watching, and we didn't understand why. We thought she was staring at us the way everyone else did. We didn't know she was kind. We didn't know what kindness from a peer looked like because we'd never experienced it. His jaw tightened. The operative watching us saw an 8-year-old's loneliness and wrote no containment concerns. That's the whole system in 3 words. They kept going. Report after report, incident after incident. The narrative that emerged wasn't dramatic. There were no beatings, no overt abuse that would have triggered even the most negligent systems intervention protocols. It was quieter than that, colder. A child systematically excluded from every social structure that might have given him connection. A child who's acting out, the pranks, the loudness, the desperate bids for attention were logged as behavioral irregularities and assessed for potential Biju influence rather than recognized as the screaming loneliness they were. The council minutes were worse. Tsunade read them aloud at Dark Naruto's request. He said he wanted to hear them in someone else's voice, wanted to hear how they sounded when a real person spoke the words. Item 7. Jinchuriki Behavioral Assessment. Operative Hawk 7 reports increased instances of attention-seeking behavior, including vandalism of public property. Tsunade paused. The Hawkage Monument painting. We were 12. We painted the Hawkage faces because nobody would look at us, and we figured they'd have to look at the mountain. Something that might have been a laugh caught in his throat. It worked, by the way. For about 2 hours, the entire village was paying attention to us. The punishment was worth it. She continued reading. Council recommends increased surveillance and evaluation for potential academy disciplinary action. Councilwoman Koharu notes that the subject's behavioral pattern is consistent with early-stage Biju influence and recommends contingency activation of Protocol 9. Hawkage Sarutobi overrules. Notes that the subject's behavior is consistent with a child seeking attention and recommends increased social support rather than punitive measures. Tsunade lowered the document. He fought for you, in his way. In his way. The bitterness in those 3 words was total. His way was to overrule the worst proposals and then do nothing about the underlying problem. No social support was ever provided. The recommendation was made and ignored. Hiruzen would protect Naruto from the council's worst impulses and then go back to his office and smoke his pipe and congratulate himself on being a compassionate leader, while the boy he was supposedly protecting went home to an empty apartment. That's not entirely fair, isn't it? Dark Naruto leaned forward. He visited. I'll grant him that. Every few weeks, the old man would show up at our apartment with some candy or a kind word or a story about our parents that was carefully edited to remove anything useful. And then he'd leave. He'd go back to his mansion, his staff, his advisors, his family, Asuma, Konohamaru, the whole Sarutobi clan, and we'd sit in our apartment alone and eat the candy and try to hold onto the warmth of those visits because they were all we had. He stood abruptly. Paced 3 steps, turned, paced back. The agitation was unusual. He'd been so controlled until now, so measured. Something about the third Hawkage's file cracked the control. Do you know what he told us? When we were 10, we asked him, we begged him to tell us about our parents, who they were, what they were like, why they left us alone. And he looked at us with those tired old eyes and said, "They loved you very much, Naruto. Someday, when you're older, I'll tell you everything. Someday, when you're older." Dark Naruto's voice shook. He died before someday came. He died fighting Orochimaru, and his secret died with him, and we found out the truth about our father from a goddamn enemy during a battle. Minato Namikaze. The 4th Hokage. The man the whole village worshipped as a hero, our father, and we found out because Pain told us. Naruto found out during Pain's attack. Yes, the most traumatic moment of his life, and that's when the universe decided to give him the truth that should have been his birthright. Not from a teacher, not from a mentor, not from anyone who loved him. From the man trying to destroy everything he cared about. He stopped pacing. His breathing was ragged, and the tremor in his hands had spread to his arms. Tsunade watched with a medic's eye and saw the deterioration spike in real time, emotional stress accelerating the physical decline. "Sit down," she said. "Please." He sat, not because she asked, because his legs were giving out. He dropped against the wall and pressed his palms to his eyes, and for 30 seconds he didn't speak. His shoulders moved with the effort of controlled breathing, in, out, the kind of deliberate rhythm someone uses when they're holding themselves together by force of will. "I'm not angry at Hiruzen," he said finally, his voice muffled by his palms. "Anger is too small a word. I'm wounded by him. He was the closest thing we had to family, and he chose the village's comfort over our right to know who we were. Every day, every single day, he made that choice. And Naruto forgave him for it, because Naruto forgives everyone, because forgiving is easier than feeling this." He dropped his hands. His eyes were red but dry. He wouldn't let himself cry, not now, not about this. "And Jiraiya," he continued, and the name came out with a weight that surprised Tsunade. "The great Jiraiya, the Toad Sage, our godfather." The word was laced with acid. "A man who was specifically, personally appointed by our father to look after us. And what did he do? He left. Traveled the world for 13 years, writing books, gathering intelligence, chasing his own demons, and didn't visit his godson once. Not once. We didn't even know he existed until he showed up to teach us the Rasengan, and even then, he was there because Konoha needed us trained, not because he wanted to be a family." Tsunade flinched. Jiraiya. The name hit her in a place she usually kept armored. Her old teammate, her old almost something, the man who died believing in Naruto and who'd been, as Dark Naruto was brutally articulating, another person who'd failed the boy before believing in him. "Jiraiya was complicated," she said. "Jiraiya was a coward. About this one thing about us, he was a coward. He faced S-rank criminals and tailed beasts and gods without blinking, but he couldn't face a baby that reminded him of his dead student. So he ran, just like you." The words were weapons, and he knew it. But there was something different in how he wielded them now, less like a blade meant to wound and more like a surgeon's tool meant to expose. He wasn't trying to hurt her, he was trying to make her see. "You're right," she said. "About Jiraiya, about me, we ran. I know I'm right. I don't need you to confirm it, I need you to do something about it." I am. We're doing something about it right now. These proposals. The proposals are paper. Important paper, necessary paper, but paper. What I need from you is something harder than paper. He met her eyes, and the intensity there was almost physical. I need you to go back to that village and burn down the culture that did this. Not the buildings, not the people, the culture. The mindset that says Jinchuriki are weapons first and people second. The tradition that says the village security outweighs a child's happiness. The unspoken agreement that says it's acceptable to sacrifice individual lives for collective stability. That's not something you can legislate. No, it's something you have to lead. Stand up in front of the village and tell them what they did. Not in euphemisms, not in political language. Tell them the truth. Show them these files. Let them see what their fear cost a child, and then dare them to look their own children in the eye and say it was worth it. Tsunade stared at him. The proposal was terrifying, not because it was wrong, but because it would work. Public confrontation with documented evidence of institutional failure would be a political earthquake. It would shatter careers, destroy reputations, fundamentally alter the relationship between the village's leadership and its citizens. It would be the most dangerous thing a Hawkage had ever done in peacetime, and it was exactly what was needed. You want me to publicly confess Konoha's sins. She said, I want you to publicly acknowledge them. There's a difference. A confession implies guilt and asks for forgiveness. An acknowledgement states facts and demands change. I'm not interested in forgiveness. I'm interested in accountability. You keep coming back to that word, accountability. Because it's the one thing nobody's ever offered. Naruto got apologies. Naruto got tears and hugs and promises that it would never happen again. But nobody was ever held responsible. Nobody lost their position. Nobody faced consequences. The council members who voted to isolate him are still serving. The Anbu operatives who watched a child suffer and wrote no containment concerns were never disciplined. The system produced atrocity and then promoted the people who administered it. The third Hawkage is dead. Danzo is dead. The war has reshuffled the entire power structure. Many of the people responsible are already gone. And many aren't. Koharu, Hamura, half the advisory council, dozens of administrators and operatives who were part of the machine. He paused. I'm not asking for a purge. I'm not asking for show trials. I'm asking for a truth commission. A public record. Let the village see what was done in its name and decide for itself what accountability looks like. A truth commission. The concept hit Tsunade like cold water, shocking, clarifying. It was a mechanism she'd read about in governance texts, used in the Land of Iron after their civil conflict, proposed but never implemented in the aftermath of the Uchiha massacre. A formal, public process of documenting institutional failure and recommending reform. It was, she realized, the capstone of everything they'd been discussing. The proposals were the structural change. The Truth Commission was the cultural change. Together, they formed a comprehensive response to systemic failure, not just patching the cracks but excavating the foundation. Add it to the document, she said. He blinked. What? The Truth Commission, write it up. Full proposal, mandate, composition, authority, timeline, public reporting mechanism. Add it to the document as the final section. She held his gaze. I'll champion it, personally. With my name and my office behind it. For the first time since she'd met him, Dark Naruto looked genuinely surprised. Not the calculated surprise of a negotiator who'd expected more resistance. Real surprise, naked and unguarded, the surprise of someone who'd braced for a fight and found an open door instead. You mean that, he said. I mean it. Not because you're forcing me, because it's right, and because I should have done it years ago. The silence that followed was different from any silence they'd shared before. It wasn't tense, wasn't adversarial, wasn't weighted with unspoken accusations. It was the silence of two people who'd arrived, by very different and painful roads, at the same place. Dark Naruto looked away. His throat worked, swallowing something, pushing something down. When he looked back, the mask was thinner than it had ever been. She could see through it to the boy underneath, and the boy was overwhelmed. He stopped, started again. Thank you, 2 words. The first time he'd thanked her for anything. Don't thank me yet, she said. Thank me when it's done. He nodded, pulled the scroll toward him and began writing. His hand trembled, and the characters were less precise than before, but the words flowed without hesitation. He'd been thinking about this, she realized. The Truth Commission had been in his mind all along. He just hadn't dared to ask for it because he'd expected her to refuse. She watched him write and felt something shift in her chest. A tectonic movement, slow and deep, the kind of shift that changes the landscape permanently. She wasn't the same Hawkeye who'd been dragged from that command base 4 days ago. She wasn't sure she was the same person. The files lay between them on the sandy floor. 12 years of documented failure, 12 years of a village sins written in its own bureaucratic hand. And above them, unseen and unheard, the search teams were closing in and the clock was ticking, and a broken boy was being carried toward them by people who loved him. But here, in this moment, in this cavern, something was being built. Not destroyed. Built. From the wreckage of what should have been, a blueprint for what could be, Tsunade picked up another file, opened it, and kept reading. The afternoon brought a visitor to the command base that nobody expected. Gara of the Desert walked through the east gate, flanked by 2 Sand Village Anbu, his Kazkij robes dusty from travel, his gourd of sand strapped to his back. He moved with the quiet economy of motion that characterized everything about him. No wasted steps, no unnecessary gestures, just a young man crossing a threshold with the calm certainty of someone who'd already decided what he was going to do. Kakashi met him in the courtyard. Kazkij-sama. We weren't expecting. I intercepted a communication about the situation. Gara's voice was the same low, measured tone it always was, sand settling into glass. The classification order apparently doesn't extend to Suna's intelligence network. Or perhaps it does, and my people are better at intercepting classified communications than your people are at keeping them classified. Kakashi couldn't argue with either possibility. How much do you know? Enough. Dark manifestation of Naruto Uzumaki, Hawkeye taken, no trail. Gara's pale green eyes swept the courtyard, the damaged buildings, the repaired perimeter, the tense energy of a base that was functioning but shaken. I'm here because this involves Naruto, and Naruto is the reason I'm alive. Gara, the situation is sensitive, if the other cage find out. The Raikage knows. He's furious but contained. The Tsuchikage suspects but hasn't confirmed. The Mizukage is focused on the eastern front and hasn't heard anything yet. Gara turned back to Kakashi. I've bought you perhaps 48 hours before this becomes an alliance-wide crisis. Use them. The directness was refreshing. Kakashi led Gara to the intelligence room where Shikamaru was working. Shikamaru didn't look up when they entered. He was in the middle of a conversation with Sai, who had arrived an hour earlier and was standing in front of Shikamaru's wall of maps looking faintly uncomfortable, which, for Sai, meant a barely perceptible tightening around his eyes. 4 facilities in the maritime territory. Shikamaru was saying, Coastal subterranean. I need you to tell me everything you remember about any route installation matching that profile. Sai considered this with the deliberate patience of someone whose early training had involved absolute information control. I was not briefed on all route facilities. Danzo compartmentalized operational knowledge. I know. I'm asking for what you do know. Anything, a reference, a code name, a supply route you remember that pointed toward the coast. There was a facility we called the Cradle. Sai's voice was neutral, but something in his posture shifted. I was taken there once as a child, for a training exercise. It was underground, accessible by sea, an island, I believe, small. The training exercise involved isolation conditioning. The room went quiet. Shikamaru's hands froze mid-gesture. Isolation conditioning, Kakashi repeated, the practice of confining a trainee in a sealed environment for an extended period to develop psychological resilience. Sai's tone didn't change. I was 9. The period was 72 hours. I don't remember much about the facility itself. I remember the dark. Nobody spoke for a moment. Gara, standing in the doorway, watched Sai with an expression that might have been recognition, one weapon child seeing another. Can you identify the location on a map? Shikamaru asked, his voice carefully controlled. Not precisely. I was transported in a sealed container, but I remember the journey took approximately 4 hours by fast boat from the Land of Lightning's eastern coast, and the island had no fresh water. They brought supplies in by weekly boat. Shikamaru turned to the naval chart. His finger traced the eastern coastline, then moved outward, drawing a circle at the distance a fast boat could cover in 4 hours. The circle encompassed a scattered archipelago of small islands, most of them unnamed dots on the chart. No fresh water. Shikamaru muttered. That eliminates any island with a river or spring. He pulled a geographic survey overlay from his stack and layered it on the chart. Island by island, he eliminated fresh water source, inhabited, too large fresh water source. 4 islands remained inside the circle. Small, barren, uninhabited, no fresh water. Can you narrow it further? Shikamaru asked Sai. Anything else you remember? The shape of the island, the approach angle, the type of rock. The stone inside the facility was dark, volcanic. And the approach was from the south. I remember because when they opened the container, the morning sun was behind us. Shikamaru eliminated 1 more island. 3 remained. That's as tight as I can get it, he said. 3 possible locations, all within the right parameters. We'd need to physically search each one to confirm. Then search them, Gara said from the doorway. It's not that simple. Each island is separated by 20 to 30 kilometers of open water. A search team would need. I have a sand platform that can carry 4 people at speed across water. My fastest Anbu can supplement with water walking. We can cover all 3 islands in a single day. Shikamaru looked at Kakashi. Kakashi looked at Gara. The Kazekid's expression was perfectly serene, perfectly certain. He's my friend, Gara said, as if that explained everything. And in a way, it did. We need to be smart about this, Kakashi said. If Dark Naruto's detection barrier picks up a search team, he might run. Or worse, he might interpret an approaching force as an attack and react accordingly. We need to find the right island first, confirm the location, and then plan an approach that doesn't trigger a confrontation. Reconnaissance first. 1 team, minimal chakra signature, passive observation only. Shikamaru straightened from the map table. I'd recommend Hinata for the approach. Her Byakugan can scan an island from offshore without landing. If she detects 2 chakra signatures, 1 matching Tsunade's profile and 1 matching a variant of Naruto's, we've found them. And then what? Sakura's voice came from the doorway. She'd come from the medical station, still in her field coat, and she'd heard enough. We know where they are. Then what? The question sat heavy on the room. Finding them was the immediate problem, but the real problem, the problem of a dying half-boy, a captive Hokage, and a reckoning that nobody was ready for, didn't have a tactical solution. Then Naruto goes in, Kakashi said. Naruto can barely stand. He won't need to stand, he'll need to talk. And if talking doesn't work? Kakashi didn't answer right away. He looked at the maps, at the files, at the tight cluster of 3 possible islands that might hold 2 people and 1 impossible situation. Sakura, he said. How's he doing? Better than yesterday. I've stabilized his chakra network as much as I can externally. Supplemental chakra infusions, Tenketsu stimulation therapy, a lot of hands-on medical ninjutsu to reinforce the damaged pathways. He's mobile. He can walk, he can talk, he can mold enough chakra for basic techniques. She crossed her arms. But he's not Naruto, not the Naruto we know. He's muted. It's like talking to someone through a window. Everything's there, but the intensity is gone. The intensity went with the dark half, Gara said quietly. Everyone looked at him. I understand this more than most. My childhood was defined by the Shukaku's influence, the rage, the bloodlust, the isolation. When I learned to control it, I didn't eliminate those feelings. I integrated them. They became part of me, channeled differently but still present. What Naruto's dark half represents is everything that makes him strong, not just his kindness, but his fury, his stubbornness, his refusal to accept the world as it is. You're saying he needs the dark half back. I'm saying he was never meant to defeat it. He was meant to understand it. To let it have a voice, and if the voice had to tear itself free and kidnap a Hokage to be heard. Gaara's expression was unreadable. Then perhaps we should listen to what it's saying. The room digested this. Gaara's perspective, forged in a childhood of isolation and madness and eventual redemption, carried a weight that nobody else's could match. He'd been where Naruto was. He'd been where Dark Naruto was. He'd come out the other side, and the person who'd pulled him through was the same boy they were now trying to save. We listen, Kakashi said, but we listen from a position of readiness. Shikamaru, plan the reconnaissance. Gaara, if you're offering transport, we accept. Hinata and Kiba on the scanning team. Sakura, keep working on Naruto. I want him as strong as possible when we move. When? Shikamaru asked. Tomorrow at dawn, we find the island, we confirm the location, and then we figure out how to bring everyone home. The team broke to prepare. Gaara lingered in the doorway. Kakashi, he said. Yeah, when Naruto faces his dark half, he needs to do it without holding back. Not combat, emotionally. He needs to stop pretending the pain isn't real. He needs to stop smiling through it. Gaara's voice carried a weight that belied his youth. I know because I did the same thing. I used Naruto's kindness as a template and built a new self out of it, but I built it on top of my pain, not instead of it. The pain is still there. I carry it every day, and because I acknowledge it, it makes me stronger rather than tearing me apart. I'll tell him. Don't tell him. He won't hear it from you. He has to feel it himself. Gaara turned to leave. That's the only way it works. Night fell. The base quieted as preparations for tomorrow's reconnaissance consumed the active staff and exhaustion claimed everyone else. Sentries walked their rounds. The communication array, fully repaired, hummed with encrypted traffic. In the medical station, Naruto sat on the edge of his bed and stared at his hands. He'd been awake for 6 hours. Sakura's treatments had helped. His chakra flow was smoother, his body more responsive, the hollow feeling less acute. But the fundamental absence remained. He was half of himself, and no amount of medical ninjutsu could fill the gap. Sakura was in the next room, reviewing her notes. Kakashi had come by earlier with a briefing, search plan, timeline, approach strategy, and Naruto had listened and nodded and understood everything and felt almost nothing about it. That was the worst part. He should be feeling things. He should be frantic with worry about Tsunade, burning with determination to find his dark half, fired up for the confrontation ahead. All of those responses were available to him intellectually. He could think through them, understand why he should feel them, even articulate them if someone asked. But the fire was gone. The engine that drove him, the raw, burning core of emotion that had powered every miracle he'd ever pulled off, was somewhere else, sitting in a cavern, making policy proposals. He closed his eyes and tried to feel the pull that Sakura had described. The magnetic tug of his separated half, the compass needle pointing toward what was missing. Nothing, or almost nothing, a whisper, a suggestion like trying to hear music from a great distance. Was that the pull? Or was he imagining it because he wanted it to be real? You're concentrating too hard. He opened his eyes. Gaara stood in the doorway. Gaara, Naruto blinked. What are you? When did you get here? This afternoon. Gaara entered the room and sat in the chair beside the bed. You look terrible. Thanks. The response was automatic, the kind of thing Naruto would say, but without the energy behind it, it fell flat. Gaara studied him for a long moment. Then, you're afraid? I'm not, you are. Not of your dark half, not of the confrontation. You're afraid that he's right, that the anger is justified. That everything you built your life on, the forgiveness, the determination, the belief that people are good, was just a way to survive, not a truth. Naruto's mouth opened, closed, opened again. How did you? Because I've been where you are. Not exactly. My darkness was external, the Shukaku's influence mixed with my own isolation. But the fear is the same. The fear that if you look honestly at what was done to you, the anger will be so big that it swallows everything else, that you'll become the monster they always said you were. I'm not. Let me finish. Gaara's voice was gentle but firm. The anger doesn't swallow you, it becomes part of you, not the dominant part, not the defining part, but a real part that you carry and acknowledge and channel into something useful. Your dark half has been doing that, turning anger into action, into proposals, into a plan to change things. The problem isn't that he's angry. The problem is that you were never allowed to be. Naruto stared at his friend, the boy who'd tried to kill him during the Chunin exams, who'd become Kazekage, who'd died and been reborn, who understood loneliness the way only someone who'd lived it could. I don't know how to be angry, Naruto said. And it was the most honest thing he'd said since the separation. I've spent my whole life choosing not to be, choosing to smile, choosing to forgive, choosing to believe in people. And it worked. It worked, Gaara. I changed people's minds, I saved people, you did. All of that is real. But it's not complete. Gaara leaned forward. Can I tell you something that took me years to understand? Kindness without anger isn't kindness. It's submission. Real kindness, the kind that changes the world, comes from someone who has every reason to be furious and chooses compassion anyway. Not because they can't feel the fury, but because they feel it fully and still choose differently. My dark half doesn't choose differently. Your dark half has never been given the chance. He's been locked away, suppressed, denied. The only thing he knows how to do with his anger is wield it, because no one ever taught him there were other options. No one ever gave him the space to feel it and then decide what to do with it. Gaara paused. That's your job, Naruto, not to defeat him, to give him that space. Naruto was quiet for a long time. The medical station hummed around them, the low buzz of equipment, the distant sounds of the base. Outside the window, the night sky was clear, stars scattered across it like thrown salt. I can feel him, Naruto said suddenly, just barely, like a tug. Somewhere out there. He touched his chest. Here, follow it. I can't even tell what direction, not physically, emotionally. Follow the feeling. Let yourself feel what he feels. Stop fighting it, stop smiling through it, just let it in. Naruto closed his eyes. He breathed. He dropped the defenses, the ones he'd built so carefully, so necessarily, over 16 years of surviving a childhood that should have broken him. He let them fall, one by one, like walls coming down, and the anger hit him like a wave. It wasn't his dark half's anger, not directly. It was his own. The anger he'd buried at 5 when the shopkeeper threw him out. The anger he'd swallowed at 8 when he sat alone at lunch every day. The anger he'd converted into determination when he failed the academy exam. The anger he'd transformed into tears when he found out about his father, too late, from an enemy. It was enormous. It was bottomless. It was the most real thing he'd ever felt, and beneath it, wrapped inside it, inseparable from it, was grief. Grief for the childhood he didn't have. Grief for the parents he never met. Grief for every cold night and empty room and unanswered question. Grief for the boy he could have been if someone had just been there. Naruto's shoulders shook. His breath came ragged. He pressed his hands to his face, and the tears came, not the bright, clean tears he'd shed before, the ones that fueled his resolve and powered his victories. These were ugly tears. Raw tears. The tears of a child who'd been alone for too long and was only now, at 16, allowing himself to feel it. Gaara sat beside him and said nothing. He didn't touch Naruto, didn't offer comfort, didn't try to fix it. He just sat there, present, steady, alive, and let his friend break apart. It lasted a long time. When it finally ebbed, Naruto's face was swollen and his chest ached and his throat was raw, and something fundamental had shifted inside him. The hollow feeling wasn't gone. His dark half was still missing, still out there, still needed. But the hollow felt different now. Less like an absence and more like a space that was waiting to be filled. A space that knew what belonged in it. I can feel him, Naruto said again. His voice was wrecked, but his eyes were clearer than they'd been since the separation. Stronger now, He turned his head instinctively toward the north. That way, far, but that way. Good. He's in pain, Gaara. I can feel that too. He's hurting and he's scared and he won't admit it to anyone. Then you'll have to be brave enough for both of you. Naruto wiped his face. Took a shuddering breath. Let it out. Okay, he said. Okay, I'm ready. Not yet, Gaara stood. Tomorrow, rest tonight, let what you felt settle, and Naruto. Yeah, when you face him, don't try to win. Don't try to absorb him or defeat him or convince him. Just be honest. For the first time in your life, be completely, terrifyingly honest about what you feel. That's the only thing that will reach him. Gaara left. Naruto lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling and felt the pull in his chest. Stronger now, directional. A thread connecting him to his missing half across 200 kilometers of dark water. I'm coming, he thought. I'm coming, and I'm not going to smile my way through it this time. I'm going to feel everything. And then we're going to figure this out, the thread hummed. Somewhere on the other side, in a cavern beneath a barren island, Dark Naruto paused in his writing and pressed his hand to his chest, feeling something he couldn't name, a warmth, a pull, a whisper. He shook it off, went back to writing, but his hand trembled more than it had before, and the characters on the page blurred slightly through eyes that were, for just a moment, wet.